Welcome everyone. Welcome to our halaqah. This is our 51st Tawheed session. The date is the 6th of October 2025. We have finished volume 1 and volume 2, so we are now starting volume 3 of Kitab At Tawheed. This book will be going through part 4 will be Tawheed, its essence and reality. Part 6 will be the Abrahamic tradition. Part 8 will be the categories and types of Tawheed. So we'll start with the introduction, which is page 1. So page 1, chapter 1, introduction. Earlier in this work, we outlined the meaning of the Islamic testimony of faith, that there is no God, deity except Allah. Underpinning the core meaning of this doctrine is that there is no deity or being that possesses the attributes of divinity, namely having absolute independence of action, particularly with regards to the acts of creation from nothingness or non-existence, whether those acts relate to shaping, forming, managing, fashioning, commanding, and forbidding, without restraint upon will, with no limitation, compulsion, or necessity. None possesses these attributes except Allah. This is in accordance with the absolute rational necessity regarding the true God, who must be characterized by the notion of self-sustenance. In other words, the necessarily existent. In turn, that means absolute independence and self-sufficiency from anything else. He is one, he does not divide, have parts nor offspring. He retains absolute solidity, meaning without hollowness, defects, deficiencies.
That's an attempt to translate the meaning of Samad. Because some people, Samad, the one, the khalaiq, or the creation, tasmid ilay. What means tasmid ilay? They just explain the word Samad by a sentence which goes where the word Samad. The explanation of Ibn Abbas, the only acceptable. He said, a Samad is the same like Musmat, Samat, the one who is not hollow, have no hollow. And then immediately you think, for example, about a steel tube or a steel bar, a round bar. Let's take it round because people think about tubes usually as round. That's not necessary. It could be square tube. If you compare one which is solid, like the one used for construction, and one which has a hole in it, clearly the one with the hole is weaker than the one that's solid. The solid is stronger. If you try to crush it, it's much more difficult than the one. Now imagine solid, 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 infinitely solid, meaning no gaps absolutely. Nothing in the material world is no gaps. So you could say, okay, I can compactify matter until it becomes a neutron star. Stop there. We can still compactify a neutron star further and further and further until it comes to a level that even the known matter becomes pure radiation, like close to the Big Bang or the situation, Allahu Alam, in the center of a black hole. Nobody knows that. Nobody can calculate yet these things because the theory of black holes is having wrong premises and so on. But that's not our discussion today. So nothing in the material universe is absolutely solid. The necessity existing must be absolutely solid. Otherwise, he has gaps. If he has gaps, he has deficiencies. These gaps could have been filled and should have been full, but they are not full, meaning he is not necessarily existing. He is not a necessary. He has contingency in him, possibilities. This is existing, meaning no possibility. It is by necessity like that, and nothing can be done about that. Otherwise, not necessarily existing. So that is Samad, solidity, absolute solidity, which in matter of other things, so it's not material, obviously in ideal things. For example, if he has knowledge in eternity before the creation, he must be in knowledge of all things. His knowledge is the present knowledge, is part of the meaning of his being, to know everything knowable, because the things are not knowable there yet. Knowable in eternity, due with his nature, that his knowledge must be perfect. He can also, 10 possible universes, but there are 12 other, he doesn't know them. No, all possible universes are known to him, and their basic equation, basic structure, etc., etc. And then chooses one of them. Even if it's only one possible universe, he knows that it's creatable, and if he decides to create, then time starts. If he doesn't start to create, eternity will persist. And eternity is like a point, if you look at a time scale. It is something else, but it's from time vision, etc. So that's the meaning of Nusayr. That's the only way, really, a divinity can define to a mathematical strictness, and some conclusion can happen. Obviously, this level of sophistication was not achieved before Islam anywhere. The Jews have somehow anthropomorphic views of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Christian must have that, because for them, he must become human. But that is to sacrifice himself for us, because that's the beginning. Because the sacrifice must be great. It cannot be just a human. Jamil. Okay. It cannot be just a prophet dying on the cross for us, which may be okay. But why a prophet? Cannot be. So it must be something much higher. The lamb sacrificed by the foundation of the world must be something higher than just a mere mortal or created being. It must have at least some sense of divinity in it. What is exactly? It was still amorphous, like it has some really genuine divinity. And this killed the Tawheed right away from the beginning. Will never become the Tawheed, because if a divinity can be turned into human, or partly, or penetrate in human, or something like that, mixed with human, it is not necessarily existing, and it cannot be the genuine divine being, the one who created the universe and kick-started time. It is something else. It is not. So they shot themselves in the foot, and there's no way they get out until they say, no, that's with the messenger. Dying on the cross or not dying on the cross, or sacrifice or not sacrifice, that's a secondary point. But they started the secondary point, and it's so very difficult to understand. How come such a noble man being killed? Oh, actually, he is not only a man, he's more. And he's sent by his father to ransom the world, or to save the world, or these things like that, which add insult to injury. Ransom the world from the sin. How come that his father could not forgive the sin? Okay, no, it's actually to save the world from the devil. How come the devil can keep them away from the father? I mean, the power of the father is and you need to negotiate with him a sacrifice. I mean, the father power is limited. Finish. It's going to be necessary. So all these are imaginary concepts. Father, son, all of them are imaginary. They cannot be divine. They can be created beings, but they are not gods. Or you give them up and start from zero, the correct start. Okay, carry on. I'm just making a comment quickly. Carry on. Rush.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
In turn, that means absolute independence and self-sufficiency from anything else. He is one. He does not divide, have parts nor offspring. He retains absolute solidity, meaning without hollowness, defects, deficiencies. He retains absolute power and perfection, being comprehensive in knowledge that covers what has been, what will be, together with what could be and what would be should it occur. His omnipotence is above all possibilities.
Yeah.
No being or entity possesses any of these attributes except Allah. Any attribution of these aspects to any other is utter fabrication and falsehood.
Yeah.
It is born of baseless imagination, having no foundation in truth nor reality. The testimony
and the proof, I think a part of the proof, and I don't know if it's translated in that section. I don't remember. I don't remember going through the evidences of Quran and prophethood. Did we go through it?
We did go through. Yes, we did. We went through prophethood. We went through.
We did they really expanded and
we did the Mongol attacks. We did the 5 from Hijaz. We did all various.
And before that, about the divinity. And so, did we go in expanded way at this one halaqah or something?
You went through the existence of multiple gods. I don't think you've gone through the quantum mechanics part, because that's still on chapter.
We don't need quantum mechanics. I just mentioned it as an example. Not
So the stuff we've gone through of on existence of God is starting from.
So there we started essentially from absolute zero, so-called absolute zero, essentially the statements of Descartes, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I exist. He formulated it the wrong formula. That's not a correct formulation. Not because I think I exist. I perceive my existence immediately the moment I think. That's the correct formula. He meant that, most likely. But he wanted to formulate it fancy way, the logician formulate things. and maybe he was confused somehow. So from that, you look inside yourself. So the problem with that is the external world, the way I see it, does it exist? Maybe it's a dream, maybe it's what? He's avoiding that. You look in yourself, in your own consciousness. That's yourself. There is no distance to travel, no senses in between. It is immediate perception, which for finite being like ourselves, who has sufficient rationality, or what we call rationality, it is immediately there. There's no way to deny it. And then you build from there, step by step, one by one, step by one. The building is obviously a complicated interaction process. To have such a concept, you have to check with the universe and go back and forth, and develop languages. Now, that's the development from Adam until now, and develop every person. When you start thinking this way, or when you say absolute zero, it's not absolute zero in that sense, but theoretically it's absolute zero, because when you will be able to think this way, when you are 15, 16, 18, but you have a history of 15, 16, 17 years of learning language from your parents, having a lot of information from them. Much of it is falsehood, much of it is true. Ton of rubbish. And you have sought to go sort of that. And you have to go behind the various optical illusion, mental optical illusion, and linguistic illusion. But this seems to be, you have all this material, but you are not conscious about it. You are not formulating it. But if you start from this so-called absolute zero, then you can bit by bit build and show where some problems have come. That's the way we started there, in a simplified way. I don't want to go to the Descartesian cogito ergo sum in detail or something like that. By the way, after Descartes, that was neglected. It was clear that external world exists, and you can do experiments, and you can apply the results to machines and so on, and to guns, and everyone was happy about that, jubilant that we are now control nature, and then just get busy with the external world. The deeper issues were neglected after philosophy got busy with essentially philosophy of morality, philosophy of revolution, philosophy and so on. Went astray, because the fundamental thing should be in ontology. Where is their being? And study that more thoroughly. That was after Descartes, more or less neglected. People cared more about epistemology. But if you don't start with looking in yourself, and starting at the 0 point of epistemology, and do it interactively, because you have to do it this way. As a finite being, you have, because you started your existence and so on, you have on that. And you have to assert that the other things you see as a human like you, and you think human can interact with them, really exist and have certain characteristics common to your characteristics. Maybe their existence, their appearance is only how the eye represented to you, maybe, but they are human like you see yourself in the mirror. So you know they are human beings, yeah? And then they have their experience. You discuss with them, and you see they think the same way. And then from there, you develop common concepts and so on. But that's how development in the childhood until now you do it critically. And then from there, you can start building a solid epistemology. Even Kant, and critique of the Reine for no criticism of pure reason, did not go that deep. And therefore, some errors, fundamental errors related to especially linguistic illusion, crept in his philosophy, which I think can be now cleaned to a level of precision, as precise or even more precise than mathematical proofs. Okay, now carry on. I'm just interjecting just to remind that, to summarize it. Okay, carry on. I will not interrupt. And
no, it's all good. I mean, this is just the purpose of this halakha is to get as much as
summarize that again.
The purpose of the halakha is to get as much as possible from you. No being or entity possesses any of these attributes except Allah. Any attribution of these aspects to any other is utter fabrication and falsehood. It is born of baseless imagination, having no foundation in truth nor reality. The testimony of faith of Islam, therefore, is to affirm all the attributes of divinity for Allah, the Exalted, while at the same time absolutely and unequivocally denying any aspect of divinity to anything other than Allah. Hence, this means to absolutely reject every supposed God or every peer or Lord besides Allah.
There is a correct definition of God that has to be necessarily existing. Now, if we say necessarily existing is a thing which is absolutely independent of these attributes I mentioned, absolutely solid and so on, you can bring the proof and discuss also in our book relatively casual, not in subdividing it thoroughly and viciously, is that an existing being can be maximum one. We don't know if there's one like that really there, but maximum it is one. Maximum it is only one. Because if there are two, they must differ in certain, the argument, they must differ in some things so we can distinguish them. Otherwise, the identical copy itself. And if you cannot point or distinguish any one of them, so they allegedly two, and in reality they are one. How can you call them two and they are completely exactly similar to each other? No difference. But if they differ of something, you can distinguish, this is God A and this is God B. A has this attribute which B does not have. So A, but attributes for existing must be either related to its necessity, so it must be in full there, or unrelated and contradictory, it must be zero, it's not there. So how come this one has this attribute and this one doesn't have it? So one of them is not necessarily existing, if they are really two. So concluding from proof, necessarily existing being can be only one, maximum one. And then the proof of the existing, when it's necessarily existing being, like the proof of God and all these other things, prove that there is at least one. So we have maximum one, at least one. What's it by necessity of reason? Exactly one. And that's a mathematical proof. Similar, you prove in abstract mathematics that the multiplicative neutral element, that's number one. Number one multiplied with anything, nothing changes. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times trillion is trillion. Everything except the zero. The zero is oddity. That's the reason dividing by zero is impossible. But ignore the zero. Any other you will have one. Actually, in the multiplication also is the same. 1 times 0 is 0. Repeat itself. So we can say it is the same like 1 times 5 is equal 5. 1 times 0 is equal 0. That fits correctly everything. This neutral element you can prove. If you assume there are two neutral elements, 1 and 1 dash, then with a small calculation, 2 lines, you will prove that the 1 dash equal 1, dictated by necessity from the nature of multiplication. There is no way it can be 2 ones. It's only 1 1 or 1 number 1 or something like that. We can do that there with the exact level of definition for the oneness of one necessarily existing. So if you're talking about a necessarily existing being, there's maximum 1. And if we prove that 1 or like that exists, because maybe there's the whole reality which we see is only contingent, that have to be refuted, obviously. And that's the proof of God, really. It's almost obvious, but you have to formulate that probably to the level of mathematical proof. Then there must be, for this reality, because they're all contingent, they must be rooted in some existing being. So there must be some necessarily existing beings. So we have few, at least one. Otherwise, the reality cannot be explained. That everything will be nothingness, which is impossible. So, and we have proven that if this kind of things exist, then there's maximum is only one. Maximum one, minimum one, maximum one, minimum sum. Then it's the only way is it's exactly one. But that has to be laid out with few lines precisely, like if we make the layout, there's only one neutral for multiplication, like the one is 1 equal dash. You have to do a few more lines and more precise. But the level of proof is the same level of proof in mathematical rigor. So this is established with mathematical. This is established with mathematical rigor. There's only one. Okay, carry on.
Okay, inshallah. There is complete disassociation and disavowal from them. The testimony requires disbelief in all false deities, which is ultimately what is meant by disbelief in Tawheed. In the previous chapters of the book, we have established with certitude the complete equivalence in meaning for the following phrases, despite how they may be expressed, namely, أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله equals أن تسلموا أن تسلم وجهك لله وتشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله equals تعبد الله ولا تشرك به شيئا
أيوه.
equals تعبد الله وتكفر بما دونه
بما دونه، تكفر بما دونه من الآلهة. نعم.
equals توحيد الله equals إن تحقق إن تحقق إن تحقق عبادة الله ومعرفة الله معرفة الله.
نعم.
So in translation, to
Because
testify.
some hadith to Mu'adh bin Jabal, you come to people of the book, so the first thing you call them to, or the people of the book, and in one form they say أن يعرف Allah, because they don't know Allah properly. They have some knowledge, but the knowledge is so deficient that they cannot be called معرفة الله. Another formulation say أن تدعوهم أن يشهدوا لا إله إلا محمد رسول الله. Another say تدعوهم أن يعبدوا الله وحده لا شريك له. All of them are equivalent. Is that various instructions, or it is one of them is original, the other is just the narrator translated according to his one of the narrators according to his understanding? It doesn't matter. They are equivalent by virtue of the Quran also, and the so-called equations of Tawheed, which we discussed in another chapter in detail, and show what does it mean. Mm-hmm. Okay. Carry on.
So the translation of all that was narrated, to testify that there is no God, deity except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, equals to submit oneself to Allah, bearing witness that there is no God, deity except Allah alone, without partner, and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger, equals to worship Allah alone and not associate anything with him, equals to worship Allah and disbelieve in all besides him, equals Tawheed of Allah, which equals to be cognizant of the recognition and worship of Allah. Yeah. This is by establishing.
Let me add more. Is actually suffice for that to say submit to Allah, make it absolute submission, which means essentially recognition and firm belief that you are owned completely by Allah, is the absolute honor of you. Secondly, that you are committed to absolute obedience and necessary. No obedience to anybody else unless he sanctioned it and give you command to do it. And this command cannot violate certain fundamental principles of reason, because Allah is the ultimate mind and ultimate rational. For example, if you find any command saying allow you or order you to accept a ruler who does not rule with Allah has revealed, or order you against the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you know it is fabricated. It cannot be from Allah. Because it's not possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as an existing perfect, to tell you, obey me by disobeying me. That is only a mentally deranged person who belongs in the mental institution would say. That's one. So that's kind of becoming. Secondly, it gives the following rule, because absolute submission is that obedience is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So anyone else deserves obedience, we must have, beside this restriction, which you mentioned, dictated by necessity of reason, that is necessary, existing, perfect, and complete. Any other one, we must have a clear, well-established, absolutely certain evidence that he allowed that or ordered it. He has to have given permission to that. So you cannot say, by this way, the social cohesion requires that you obey the ruler. That's a bad argument. A good argument is that he commanded, أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. That give a command. And even that restricted by the rest of the ayah. But we are not going into the details or restrictions and so on. And clearly, one restriction which is not mentioned in the ayah directly is simple. You cannot obey if this one order you to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because otherwise Allah is telling you, obey me by disobeying me. This is impossible. So this is the master restriction. And other restriction we may detect by necessity of reason. You see the point? So I add that just submit absolutely and being owned completely by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough. It implicates all of that. It implicates all of that, because you cannot be completely owned absolutely by any entity except the necessary existing being who is either created you directly or created you through a long chain of cases. But he's the initial creator. That's the only way. There's no way it can be the real owner. That's it. If you are a slave, a human slave owned by a master, he owned you by buying you for money. But he did not create you. He is not your father. He's not your grandfather, something else. So he has a participation in ownership of you because of the money. So you serve at his house or his garden, maybe, but that's not complete ownership. So if you go to the complete ownership, only the initial, the absolutely initial one, who has no partner in the initiation, absolutely initial one. So keep that in mind, that further precision will be this indicate obedience to anybody except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is barred absolutely unless there's an evidence, and the evidence cannot go against the fundamental principle of divinity, which is that perfection and so on. So you cannot you order to obey if you order by. So we don't need the hadith. Whoever commands you with a ma'asiyah, with the disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't obey him. We don't need the hadith, but it's icing with the cake. Even without the hadith, we conclude that by necessity of reason. But the hadith, by the way, is mutawatir also, with this wording essential in various occasions. So that's quite clear. That's quite clear. But I mean, things like that. But if you look, for example, the whole Quran, which the big thing you feel, especially in India and Pakistan, you have to obey your father or your parents, obedience to the parents. And people really think this is the way parents should be treated. See, otherwise you عاق. No, عقوق is the opposite of ihsan. What Allah says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. No ta'ah. Search all the Quran, no ta'ah mentioned with the walidain except in one negative place. If they try to force you out of belief, don't obey them. In other things, you may obey them, you don't obey them, depending on the situation and the type of command. That's something else. It doesn't mention that. It mentions in that specific case, don't obey them categorically. That's all. If you send the parents everything in the Quran, scan it, do it. Don't trust me on that. My scan indicate is everywhere. Pray for them for rahmah. Do this, do that, do that. لا تقل لهم أف ولا تنهرهما. Does not mean you have to obey them or not obey them. I mean, you don't treat them harshly. Has nothing to do with obedience. Don't treat them harshly in obedience to Allah's command. It's not like they order you or don't order you. That's definitely not included in the ayahs. So barrul walidain and being righteous to the parents does not mean obeying them. It may in things which obedience is allowed generally, but it doesn't include it. And that's the major mistake. People think that uquq meaning refusing to obey. No, it's not refusing to obey. And many evidence in the Sunnah indicate that, but people do not read them with upside down head, not to the correct direction of the brain. The brain is screwed upside down and is wobbling all the time. That's where you get. You have to be treated charitably and so on. Yeah. But it does not mean that, for example, your mother say, I will be angry with you until Yawm al-Qiyamah. I hear that from many mothers, especially in Hijaz. If you don't divorce this woman, no. Sorry, mom, that's not up to you. I will decide. If she hurts you in something, then I will decide justice. And there are many solutions. One is separate them into separate houses. But who divorce and do it? Me, not you. You cannot command that and claim this is your right as your mother and threaten with akhirah and so on. Stop this nonsense, for example. But there's needed a level of maturity and manhood and character to be to really make sense out of it. And it really, but through history, it developed in that way. طاعة الوالدين is not طاعة بر الوالدين, righteousness and charity to the parents. That's what is commanded. Even linguistically, read the Quran. Check it. I give that example just because it's most likely for many is shocking. No. It doesn't mean that every command you just obey. If your parents tell you, listen, don't take the telephone with you when you're going out, because I noticed that while you are crossing the street, you are using the phone. That's dangerous. They want your good, and the command is reasonable. And this way, as a reasonable human being and charitable son, you should accept and obey in that sense, because it's beneficial for you. And because this way, you are respecting and honoring their good feeling for you, their care for you. But they have also, in these cases, you have to give a justification. So the relation with you will be not only emotional, I am your father, you obey, you do that without even just, no. If this and this and this, or don't go with this guy, he's suspicious. Some people saw that he is maybe doing drugs. Very clear from him. Clearly. Avoid haram. But it's the divine command anyway. Now, applied and initiated in a specific situation through the mouth of your parents. So you have to obey it because it's the divine command. To avoid, on the mouth of the Prophet, to avoid the bad company, because bad company can infect you. The viruses of disobedience and misguidance jump from person to person. And if you sit with one person sufficiently long and live with him and share with him many things and they like playing and so on, the probability of getting the virus getting higher. And your parents are the first one who should supposed to be worried about that. Yeah. So I'm just explaining a little bit that point specifically because there's a big misunderstanding about that. And many, unfortunately, parents, fathers, and mothers abuse it. And regarding that, there's a bit stretching their muscles against their son or daughter, or especially against the daughter-in-law, which is all having no ground, and they are stepping their limit. And they should be stopped in a gentle way. You don't scream at them. Your mother, listen. It happened to me once. They say, this woman, she should be divorced. Don't mention the word divorce in your tongue. That's none of your business. I manage that. Your business say, we don't need to have her coming visiting weekly. I will tell her, if there's a problem between you and mother, for example, the one of the wives, I don't mention which one. Either you sort a problem by yourself, and I warned you before that. Don't be like that. Otherwise, ultimately, the taste will become sour. The solution, when we go every Thursday, visiting them in Malas, from our housing in the university, you stay home alone. Do whatever, something else. And we spend the day there until you go and sort the problem. How to sort? You have to know. You are a woman, she is a woman. Go and say, I made a mistake that, and you made a mistake this way, and chide each other and solve the problem by being open. What caused it? That's it. That's between you. But for me, it's simple. You stay there. Don't come with me. I will take the kids. And she said, great solution, stay there. And after a few months, she regretted and asked me, can you mediate? I say, no, I'm not going to mediate. I will take you there, say, if you want to say salam and discuss with you something in private, put you there and leave. So you have free air to discuss with each other. But you have to use your mind, not emotion and outbursts. That doesn't work. But nobody it will work. That's it. Simple as that. But you have to have some character, some understanding. The first step is to see charitable treatment is not the same like obedience or non-obedience. It's something else. Okay, we're good. We said maybe it's not waste. We spent a lot of time in an area which is a branch of sub-branch of Tawheed, but it may be very useful because I think especially the Asian community, and I think also the Arab community in Hijaz and so on, is suffering from that considerably.
Definitely the Asian community beats them in this.
Yeah, I think they break the limits. Yeah.
It basically, a friend of mine refers to them as circumcised Hindus.
Yeah. Unfortunately, essentially. So we have to educate the people this way and in a proper way that they become well balanced, not become unrighteous to the parents. No, you can't do it without being unrighteous. Simple. That's it.
Okay, the last paragraph of the first chapter, introduction. This is by establishing the clear proof that diversity of words and phrases with the complete identical meaning of the sentences contained therein comes from the seal of prophethood, Muhammad, the infallible prophet of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa alayhi.
Yeah.
On to chapter 2, categories or types of Tawheed, page 3. The conceptualization of Tawheed, monotheism, and the oneness of Allah in Islam is but a single and actually straightforward concept. It is a testimonial that there is no God except Allah. Furthermore, this means that all attributes related to al-uluhiyya, divinity, are exclusively to Allah the Almighty, while at the same time absolutely and categorically denying that any of these attributes of these divine qualities are attributable to anyone or anything other than Allah. However, despite this, the foundational myths and ideas of the mushrikeen are quite numerous. They are intertwined, often complex despite they are intertwined, often complex, despite being inherently inconsistent and fundamentally contradictory. Given this, scholars may well need to provide additional clarification by way of categorizing Tawheed into different types or subdivisions in order to address the various forms and guises that shirk may take. Moreover, by doing this, the frameworks that are formulated may help to guide people away from the multitude of overlapping darkness to which shirk is shrouded in, to the single light of Tawheed. Accordingly, we may therefore provide a categorization to Tawheed in the following manner. Number 1, Tawheed al-Dhatiyya al-Ilahiyya.
The only one divine being.
Monotheism as it relates to the divine essence and godhood. Some may refer to this as being Tawheed al-Niyya. Tawheed al-Niyya.
He is that in me.
Oh.
We can't call it Mahiyya. Mahiyya, what is it? The what is can be addressed to multiple being belonging to a certain class. But there is no multiple being, it's only one. What is in instead of what is. But this is very confusing. But if a division is needed, maybe the reason they separate this one is that because it seems to be the Christian falling in that. But they fall in that because the divine being, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit being three in one and one in three, is only constructible if all three are contingent, not necessarily existing. If you make them existing, it completely collapses. It can't be. So it is secretly assumed without saying it. But when the people philosophize about what are making necessity existing, the ultimate result, like Thomas of Aquinas, one of the biggest philosophers toward the end of the Middle Ages, a little bit before the end, he said, the Trinity is a divine mystery. That's not a solution. Even if there are definitely divine mysteries like the wisdom, why this thing is created for this thing, because you need to know infinite many variables in the universe and so on. But there's nothing infinite variable. The divine being is known and it's just existing. And it's also mathematical proof that he is one. So, and there is nothing which you can call substance, because the moment you call substance, they share in substance. They are different persons, entities sharing in a substance. That's only possible to share in a substance if you are talking about contingent being and then you classify them by necessity. Otherwise, there's nothing called substance. For example, I could say we have a material called iron. From that, we can have steel rods for construction, steel beams for constructing these high rises. We could have also the shield of a tank, but all of them from iron. That's the meaning of what they say, essentially. The shield is not the steel bars, the big steel bars carrying the skyscraper and so on. And it's not the same. It's another entity, another being. But because we have something called iron is a material. It's not a necessarily existing being that can be cut in pieces and so on. And this contradicts the definition of necessary being. You cannot ever derive something like that, like something like a substance or material or essence or something, except if you have several entities sufficiently similar in certain aspects that say, oh, they share a substance or they share this attribute or something like that. And you have convincing reason to believe that they share. Then, by necessity, all of them are contingent. But you have to make a choice. And that's the reason he ends it's a divine mystery. There should be no divine mystery there, because it doesn't work. If you make a diagram, you will never be able to make the diagram non-contradictory. And there's a famous diagram I used to tweet sometimes in time past. It says, the Son is not the Father, and the Father is not the Holy Spirit, but the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God, and so on. If they would say from God's substance, the swindle will immediately disappear. So it's God, this God, God, and there is only one God. In reality, was saying there's only one God substance, but it cannot be something like God substance cannot exist. It's not just existent. So it destroys itself. Either you do this or do this, either one will destroy monotheism, genuinely. He tried to combine both without addressing the problem and claiming this, the divine mystery. The divine mystery and divine action cannot extend to the impossible.
It's almost like they're trying to make a divine primordial soup through which the
something is non-existing thing. But in that case, it's an impossibility. It's not a soup. A soup is a mixed contingent being. You can make very well soup from onions and tomato and so on. If you balance it well, you may get an excellent soup. No problem.
But what means that they're trying to make
because all of them are contingent and mixable, and they can add the amount, increase until you have a well-balanced soup. Concerning the necessity, there is nothing to be added and subtract. It's either there or not there.
To conceptualize it as like a dot, almost like basically.
Exactly. The best representation in mathematics is the mathematical dot in the plane. Even the abstract one, because the mathematical we see is actually extended. If you take a microscope and enlarge, you see the very big area. But assume that is ideally going to the absolute dot with no extension. There's need a lot of abstraction, mathematics and proofs and limits and so on, which has to be done very cautiously. And that's achieved only 2.5 centuries past. Before that, they were not even able to handle the limits. You remember the famous Zeno paradox. Zeno said, if we shoot an arrow to a target, we know that it arrived there in, let's say, in 1 second or 10 seconds. But let's analyze it in detail. If it's half distance, it takes presumably half the time. Then the remaining we divide in 2 halves. Then we have half plus quarter plus kada. But we have infinite many bits like that. And the sum of infinite many bits must be infinite. That's the mistake. He does not know how to do calculation properly for infinite series and sequences. And then say there's a paradox. How come that even the arrow itself reaches the 1 meter at all? But we see it reaches, so it seems to be a paradox, something confusing, something look magical. There's no magic. If you do the calculation correctly, half the distance, you spend half the time, good. And then half of the half is a quarter, and then an eighth, and then 1/16, and so on. If you write that correctly and do the Gaussian trick, you can, even without the full theory of limits, you can calculate up to the level n. And you see, if you let n go to infinity, you get a finite number. I don't remember the numbers. I think it is in that case 5, and it will be in case 1, and dividing it down, it will end you, the total sum is 1 exactly. That's it. In the case of 10 seconds, it will be a total will be 10. You can't do it, but by being cautious, by adding bit by bit in a finite addition to any number n, and I write it in the reverse downstairs, add together, and know that's the double of the what I expect up to that division, and then let n go to infinity. That's one of the simplest examples given to the kids now. No paradox, no Zeno problem, nothing. But at Zeno time, it appears overwhelming any mind. Now, for kids in school, I don't think kids maybe in grammar school, but elementary school, but maybe middle school, they know how to do it. Maybe do it even in elementary school nowadays. No, I think maybe middle school. Because they have to accumulate some things before that, fraction, addition, and things like that. So you see, these are strict mathematical proofs. With absolute certainty. No power, even divine power can change that. Because power relates only to the contingency. Every contingent thing and being and attribute can be created and made. Anything necessary, it is necessary by itself. How can it be made or erased from existence? It's not possible. So power relates to contingency. And that's one dangerous blunder. Some people fell in it and ended in never-ending circularity and so on, which ending that you can prove that God exists and that exists at the same time. Equally probable, equally possible. If you think it's possible to create or annihilate the necessary existing by divine power or any power, infinite power. That's so the definition. If you say God has infinite power, is in a metaphorical, allegorical sense. It's power infinite, extending all possible contingencies. But necessarily existing impossibilities are in another domain altogether. That's not a domain of power, not a domain of time. That is an absolute, which is represented in reality in the being of the necessarily existing being, which is one. So all of these will not get you anywhere. But you have to go a bit deeper, and you have to respect mathematics and so on, and show that these things are dictated by necessity, cannot be defined otherwise. If you prove that, then it is done. There's no way it can be otherwise. It's impossible. For example, if you define triangles properly, as it's done in axiomatic geometry, in ancient geometry, it was based on feeling and vision and so on. But if you define it and define perpendicularity properly, and then you prove the Pythagorean theorem, automatically it is a necessity for that to be applied. And the opposite, if you assume the Pythagorean, you can prove that there is a perpendicularity, the equivalent, just equivalent formulation, but some of it is obvious, you see it with your eye, some of it seems to be deep, but how can it be that a square here is equal to the sum of the two squares, and you shift squares, like in time you Euclid, and then you get a theorem, you think you made a miracle. It's not. It's by definition of the triangle. But it can appear sometimes a complex form that this one leads to this and this one leads to this. It's equivalent. But for that, you have to get some advanced theory to formulate it in that way. We have, alhamdulillah, in mathematics, in basic mathematics up to the beginning of analysis, we don't need even to go all the way to differentiation and integration. Just limits and so on, and the nature of logarithm and exponential function, and these relatively basic things. And then many measures of metaphysics can be mapped on that and then resolved right away. But continue now. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just to finish the first definition, the Tawheed Dhatiyya al-Ilahiyya, also Tawheed al-Niyya.
Anyway, if I get the time to review that, I will reformulate it better and more sharper.
Mm-hmm. And that's monotheism of existence. Number 2, Tawheed al-Khaliqiyya, Tawheed as it pertains to the matter of creation. This includes the aspect of creation itself, formation, shaping, and bringing this into existence from non-existence.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. The initial real, the later forming material already present to you for someone else and so on is not the Khaliqiyya, which you mean. And the Quran uses even the word Khalq for other people, for example. For Isa, when he fashioned from the clay a bird and then blew in it and it becomes bird by all of it by permission of Allah, he's doing khalq. He tell Isa, remember my favor on you, etc., etc. وَتَخْلُقُ مِنَ الطِّينِ كَهَيْئَةِ الطَّيْرِ. And you form or create. You can use the word create. There's the word khalaqa there, which usually translated with create. It's more precise to say it. Create is more like ibda', initiation of creation. But anyway, khalq. Okay, let's use the word khalq. Well, the same name for the use the divine. Allah al-Alim khalaqa kulli shay faqaddara taqdira. You create from the mud, from the tin, the shape of a bear. That's a creation, just a shape, according to his imagination. But the material is given to him. He's starting with the material. Where the material comes, we don't need to bother. We know it comes from the ocean or from the mountain, crumbling and turned around the tectonic plates. Oh, we can go back billion years, and the Earth was formed in the third generation of stars and so on, until it has enough higher elements and so on, until we have the Earth. The first generation was really just helium, and we know that theory. Until you go to the Big Bang. Who initiated that? Who does the initial khalq? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the creation we mean. The fundamental creation, the initiating creation, the creative with no example previously, that creation ex nihilo. That's what I mean. Tawheed al-Khaliqiyya is that this Khaliqiyya is exclusive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody has this Khaliqiyya. Yeah, carry on. So you can say Tawheed al-Khaliqiyya.
Number 3, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Monotheism of lordship. Here there are two subdivisions to this. A. Tawheed al-Mulk wa Tadbir wa Tasarruf al-Taqwiniya. Monotheism as it pertains to sovereignty, management, and universal control or cosmic control.
Mm.
B. Tawheed al-Hakimiyya wa Tashri'. Monotheism of governance and legislation, which is equivalent to A above. At this juncture, some critics or even skeptics may postulate the question, why are you abandoning or turning away from the well-established tripartite definition of Tawheed enumerated as being Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat? That division is commonplace and has been widely taken on board without necessarily being properly scrutinized. No doubt the backing of the petrodollar from the Saudi establishment has made this seem as though the tripartite division of Tawheed is a matter revealed from the heavens and or being based upon an extensive study of the legal texts, the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah, as well as the statements of the Salaf, the earliest generations of Islam. Naturally, many view the tripartite definition as a matter which is self-evident, needing no qualification or even justification. Yet nothing can be further from the truth. To begin, consider the wording as expressed in the following edict from the Fatwa of the Permanent Committee for Scholarly Research and Iftar. Fatwa number 8493. Question 1. What are the types of Tawheed and what is the definition of each type? A. There are three types of Tawheed: Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is testifying that Allah alone is the creator, the sustainer, the giver, and the taker of life, and the controller of all affairs in the dominion of the heavens and the earth. It also means attributing governance and legislation only to Allah through sending His messengers and revelation of His books. Allah the Almighty says, all creation and command belongs to Him. Exalted be Allah, Lord of all the worlds. 754. Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah is the worship of Allah alone. Nothing else is to be worshipped, invoked, or sought for help. Vows and sacrificial animals must be dedicated exclusively to Him. Allah the Almighty says, say my prayers and sacrifice my life and death are for Allah, Lord of all the worlds. He has no partner. This is what I'm commanded, and I am the first to devote myself to Him. That's Surah 6, 162 and 163. And He says, so pray to your Lord and make your sacrifice to Him alone. That's 108, verse 2. Tawheed al-Isma wa Safa means describing Allah the way He has described Himself and the way His messenger described Him, naming Allah with the names that He has named Himself with, and His messenger named Him named Him within the Sahih Hadith without tasbih comparison, tamthil likening Him to creation, or ta'wil interpretation, or ta'til denial. There is nothing like Him. He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing, and that's 42:11. Also, one can find in the Fatwa Nur ala Darb the following.
That's the fatwa we buzz in the radio, yeah.
Question: how does a Muslim attain Tawheed? Answer: may Allah have mercy upon him. He answered as follows: Tawheed is achieved by ikhlas, sincerity, in testifying that La ilaha illallah, there is no God except Allah, which means La ma'bud bi haqqa illallah, none is worthy of worship by right or in truth except Allah. Everything that is worshipped besides Allah is false. Allah the Blessed and Almighty said, it is Allah alone who is the truth, and whatever else they invoke is sheer falsehood. Tawheed is also attained specifically Tawheed al-Ittibah by adherence to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ without deviation from it, nor by seeking to outrun it in enthusiasm, nor fall behind in negligence. And that's okay. Here one can clearly see from the aforementioned text the formulations as expressed that al-ilah, al-ma'bud bihaq, the one who is worshipped by right. Next, there is the following which is cited in La'natul Mustafid bishar. Is that, I'm not sure if it's La'natul or Ina. La'natul Mustafid bisharh Kitab At Tawheed by Saleh
Not La'na, something else.
Yeah, it might be an I. I'anatul.
إعانة maybe إعانة
It's transliteration, so it's not the Arabic there. إعانة المستفيد بشرح كتاب التوحيد by صالح ibn Fawzan al-Fawzan. Okay, continue laughter, yeah? The
Now,
Sheikh,
believing people still can be counted from the human race to someone who, Allah Alam, which race he can count as a two. Carry on.
okay, the Sheikh, in reference to Sikh Muhammad ibn Wahhab, may Allah have mercy upon him, said regarding the chapter concerning those who deny any of the names and attributes, meaning what is the real ruling upon this? What is the evidence for it? Here the relevance of the chapter lies in the fact that Tawheed is of three types: Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed al-Asma wa Safa. The majority of this present book focuses upon the second type, which is Tawheed al-Ibadah, given that it is the central point of contention between the messenger and the respective peoples. It is also most it is also the most emphasized and frequently mentioned in the Quran, being the subject matter of its call and foundation. This is the meaning of the testimonial, La ilaha illallah, there is no God except Allah. For that reason, Allah has created the creation, as He, the Almighty, says, I created jinn and mankind only to worship me. That's 51-56. Regarding the first type, which is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, most nations acknowledge this, particularly those people who lived at the time when the Quran was revealed, such as the
That's
kuffar.
what we responded to in the chapter was Shirk al-Arab. The claim that the Arab have even extreme by Wahhab, they don't have Shirk and Rububiyyah at all. You remember that discussion? He's repeating that, but a little bit in milder form. And he said most nations, especially the Arab at the time of the Prophet, he learned a little bit more, but he's still stuck in this swamp, in this nightmare. Yeah, carry on.
Okay. Regarding the first type Tawheed, most nations acknowledge this, particularly those people who lived at the time when the Quran was revealed, such as the Kuffar of the Quraysh and the Arab Mushrikeen. They accepted Tawheed al-Rububiyyah as they believe that Allah is the creator, the provider, the giver of life and death, and the disposer of affairs. They admitted this as shown by many Quranic verses, namely, if you, Prophet, ask them, who created the heavens and the earth, they are sure to say they were created by the Almighty, the All-Knowing. 43:9. If you, Prophet, ask them who created them, they are sure to say Allah. So why are they so deluded? 43:87. Say, who is the Lord of the seven heavens? Who is the Lord of the mighty throne? And they will reply, Heaven. They will reply, Allah. Say, will you not be mindful? Say, who
Yeah,
holds
the same
control of
ayah we
everything?
discussed here. You can skip it. That is the
Okay.
statement of Fawzan. Essentially repeating the ayahs without any further discussion, reading it very superficial. The same way of the Khawarij. They read the Quran without it going through their throats, meaning going to the chest, mean the metaphorical chest, it turned, assimilated and turned into knowledge. Does it happen with them? It's just shallow reading.
This is matter which is established, but doesn't allow one entry into the fold of Islam. Whoever acknowledges and limits themselves to it without being accompanied by the second type, and it is Tawheed al-Ibadah, fulfilling its requirements, is not considered as being Muslim, even if they accept Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Regarding the third type, it is Tawheed al-Asma wa Safa. In reality, it is subsumed under the rubric of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Given this, some of the scholars have made division into two: Tawheed al-Ma'rifah wal Ithbat, and it's Tawheed Tawheed al-Rububiyyah wal Asma wa Sifa, and it's Tawheed al-Ilmi. Tawheed in relation to Talab wal Qasad, and it is Tawheed al-Talab al-Ilmi, and it is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Al-Fawzan is one of the
طلب
yeah.
العملي, much like العملي, not العملي.
Okay. Al-Fawzan is one of the leaders for some a totem of the sect of Wahhabism, a member of the infamous Council of Senior Scholars in the tyrannical Saudi kingdom. The excerpt quote provided above addresses many issues, including the matter of Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah in their perception. As a concept, they hold that Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah is equal to Tawheed al-Ibadah. In turn, that rests upon the acceptance of the idea that God, Al-Ilah, is equivalent to one that is worshipped. al-ma'bud. Secondly, that the kuffar among the Quraysh and Arabs are more generally, at the time of revelation, accepted and affirmed what they define as being Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, believing that Allah is a creator, the giver of life and death, and that He manages all affairs. Yet despite this, it was insufficient overall for their entrance into the fold of Islam. Following on from this, the confirmation that Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is insufficient by itself to enter into the fold of Islam is repeatedly and emphatically confirmed by way of the following explanation that is outlined in Sharh al-Aqidah At Tawheed by another totem of Wahhabism, Abdulaziz al-Rajhi. And this is from his book.
Mhm. He's the one who made the sharh. Okay, that's how he is ancient.
Uh,
The sharh. Mhm.
we
Explain.
say, so
Mhm.
we say, assured by the tawfiq of Allah regarding the tawheed of Allah, that Allah is one, He has no partner, there being nothing like unto Him. Second, al-iman in the matter of lordship of Allah, and belief that Allah is the Rabb, and other than Him is subjected to His lordship. He is Ar-Rabb, He is the Rabb of His servants, and others are to be loved, as He may be may He be glorified, said, praise belongs to Allah, Lord of the worlds.
Mhm.
He is the Lord of the worlds. All besides Allah is His creation. That's Surah Fatiha, verse 2. Is He all besides Allah is His creation. He, the Almighty, is Lord of creation. All others subjected to His dominion. Third is the affirmation that Allah is a creator. All besides Him, the creation. All besides Him, the creation. Creation. As He, the Almighty, said, Allah is the creator of all things. That's 39:52. And who created all things and made them to an exact measure. 25:2. Fourth, the firm belief that Allah is Al-Malik, while all besides Him are under His dominion. He is Al-Malik of everything, everything besides Him being subjected to His dominion. Fifth, the firm belief that Allah is Al-Mudabbir, one who manages and controls all affairs. All besides Him are subject to His management. He maintains creation, gives life, causes death. He provides sustenance, being Ar-Razik, the sustainer. He sends down the rain. He is the cause of all causes. He bestows honor, causes humiliation, lowers and raises ranks. He is the manager of all affairs. Exalted be He. All others besides Him subjected to His management. By way of this, the individual establishes the oneness of Allah in relation to His Lordship, firmly establishing the existence of Allah and the belief that Allah is a necessarily existent being by His essence. Confirming the Lordship of Allah and belief that He is a Rabb, all besides Him subservient. And confirming that Allah is Al-Khalq, the Creator, all besides Him, the creation. Al-Khaliq, sorry. Confirming that Allah is Al-Malik and all besides Him subject to His dominion, and confirming that Allah is Al-Mudabbir, all besides Him are subject to His management. However, this Tawheed is not sufficient for true Iman or salvation from the fire of hell, nor does it make a person a Muslim. This type of Tawheed was acknowledged by the Kuffar, the Mushrikeen of Quraysh, Allah the Almighty.
The same
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, that's what we answered to. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just you can read the ayahs 43 to 87. If you ask them who created they should say Allah, say God, okay, and then carrying on. So I mean, you can read the text yourself. So you go through ayah 29:61 and then 23:83 to 90, 10:31. So you can read that, inshallah. This type of Tawheed was acknowledged by the Kuffar of the Quraysh, yet it didn't bring them into the fold of Islam. The Messenger of Allah sallam, fought them, deeming their wealth and lives to be lawful to appropriate because they didn't fulfill its necessary requirements, namely Tawheed al-Uluhiyya wal-Ibadah. The second Tawheed al-Asma was Safa. It is the Iman and acknowledgement of Allah's most beautiful names and His lofty attributes, which are confirmed by the way of the Book and the Sunnah. And it is Iman in them and affirmation of them for Allah, which is befitting His majestic greatness, without any distortion, negation, or comparison. In relation to Asma wa Sifat, they are tawfiqiyah. Nobody has the right to bestow such names or attributes by himself. Instead, al-asma wa sifat are tawfiqiyya, established only by way of the Book and Sunnah. unless it is proven by unless it is unless sorry, but unless it's proven by the book of the and the Sunnah, we stop and do not confirm it. It is required to have iman in them and acknowledge them without any distortion, negation, or comparison. Okay. And this type of Tawheed was acknowledged by the Kuffar of the Quraysh. They acknowledged as such, and the Mushrikeen acknowledged the genus of this type, none among them partaking in denial of any aspect of Asma wa Sifa except as it related to the name of Ar-Rahman. Specifically, thus Allah revealed, yet they disbelieved in the Lord of Mercy. When the Prophet ﷺ gave the order to write the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, he instructed the scribe with write in the name of Allah, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Suhail, who was the negotiator on behalf of the Mushrikeen, said, write in your name, O Allah, for we don't know of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Al-Hafiz ibn Kathir, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, it is apparent that their denial of Ar-Rahman was born of obstinacy and stubbornness. The name Ar-Rahman was even found in the poetry of Al-Jahiliyyah, ascribing Ar-Rahman to Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, as the poet said, what the beneficent wills either binds or sets free. The denial of the name of Ar-Rahman by the Mushrikeen was born of obstinacy. They were not reported to have objected to any of the names of Allah, bar this specifically. This type of Tawheed, which is the Tawheed al-Isma wa Safa, is not sufficient for Al-Iman and Islam. A person doesn't enter Islam until they have affirmed and acknowledged what is Tawheed al-Uluhiyya wal-Ibadah. Namely, to say this type of Tawheed, which is Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifa, like the previous type of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, is not sufficient on its own to be considered as a Muslim, a mu'min, true believer or muwahid, adherent of monotheism. It doesn't ensure salvation from the fire of hell, nor entry into paradise until the individual affirms the oneness of Allah in relation to His divinity. The third type, Tawheed al-Uluhiyya wal-Ibadah, and it is the oneness of Allah by way of the acts of His servants. The first type it is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, the oneness of Allah by way of His acts as Ar-Rabb, relating to the creation, the provision, the giving of life and death. This is the acts of Allah. You affirm Allah's oneness by recognition of these acts as His acts alone. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is the oneness of Allah by way of His acts. Regarding Tawheed al-Uluhiyya, it is relating to the Tawheed of Allah by way of the acts of His servants. That is, your actions as a human, such as Salah, Zakah, Sawm, Hajj, the honoration of your parents, the maintenance of family ties, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, by refraining from the prohibited matters. You draw closer to Allah by establishing His oneness, by undertaking these acts only for Him. You perform them sincerely for Allah, seeking His pleasure and the hereafter. This is Tawheed al-Ibadah. Tawheed al-Ibadah is the first and last call of the messengers. It is the beginning of this path, the first juncture for the one seeking the path to Allah. It is the foremost message of the messengers, as Allah the Almighty has informed us about the prophets. Allah the Exalted says, we sent Noah to his people. He said, my people serve Allah, for He is your Lord. That's 23:23. This Tawheed, the Tawheed al-Uluhiyya, is beginning and end of the deen. It is outward and its inner essence, being the first and last dawah of the messengers. It is the departure point of the path, the first juncture for the seeker on the path of Allah, and it is what provides entry into being a Muslim and Islam, and upon what one departs the dunya with. The Prophet ﷺ said in a Sahih Hadith, if one last words are, there is no God but Allah, he will enter Jannah. This Tawheed was the reason Allah inaugurated behind Allah inaugurating creation, for which He sent the messengers and by which Allah revealed the book. For this reason, the striving of jihad was made, the making of the coming hour of truth, and to which the enormous events of the hereafter will occur. It inaugurates the division of mankind into the happy and the wretched, kuffar and mu'mineen, and this Tawheed is the final goal which is beloved and pleasing to Allah. This Tawheed is a goal to which Allah the Almighty, the Mighty and Sublime loves. This Tawheed, which is the root issue upon which disputation arose between the prophets and messengers, both in ancient and
You
modern
see, he's
times.
indulging in this Tawheed. That's what you call rhetoric arguments, grandization, and so on. Nothing substantive there besides what we said initially. And even he said, Tawheed al-Uluhiyya or Ibadah, making Allah one by the action of His creation. Even the formulation is bad, meaning there's certain action, essentially what it means, and shown by their detailed definition, is that certain action are ibadah by themselves, by necessity, as such, even if directed to a wall, but they are ibadah, and these should be exclusively directed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is Tawheed al-Uluhiyya according to them. So there's something independent called ibadah. And if you direct it to someone, you made that something ilah. You broke Tawheed. It should, principally, should be directed only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you direct to someone else, then it is an ilah. By human action, meaning humans create their own aliha. That's it. They created their imagination. And this is so grave, and the result of that is so grave that the rest of the book is essentially addressing this point and explaining. And then he goes, even if he said Tawheed al-Ibadah is that Salah, Zakat, that's not even that what the Habiri genuinely say. These are, if you commit to them, you commit them as obedience to Allah's command. So it's part of the Rububiyyah and Hakimiyyah in any case. But when you're doing the action, you are not devoted to Allah Ta'ala, pure for Allah Ta'ala, do it for show off or something like that, that action is at least annihilated. It may annihilate Tawheed because you deviated from its proper target. But that calling that Tawheed by itself is a mistake. Is actually the obedience of the command is Tawheed. But all of this is one level deeper, not very much deep. It's not like we're digging deep into almost to the mantle of the earth. No, just dig even to shallow waters like 500 meters, 600 water, which can be replenished by the rain, not even fossil ancient groundwater. They are so shallow, is unbelievable. But this will come in detail by composing matters bit by bit. And that's the reason he has to go around. That's the most important one. Without it, don't be a Muslim. You lose akhirah, you do this and this. That's what you call it. Insha, just talk, like poetry. Just pure rhetoric expressions and rhetoric arguments, making things by talking about his greatness, and say things like that. Establish that it exists further this, and then we can discuss how great it is or not. That's a secondary issue. Now he comes from, according to his imagination, it is great and the most important, and make that an evidence that it is valid, which is a circular argument. But that will come all later. Anyway, I think we read from Rajhi enough, but I wanted to bring the whole text first all to be clear, exactly word by word. Secondly, to have it all recorded in our book, that in the case they change it or they say, oh, this Sharh of Tahawiyah is not authentic, we have better Sharh now, and so on, because they keep changing without telling the people. They keep changing. They said, for example, Tawheed al-Uluhiyya is Tawheed al-Ta'a. Now they run away to Ta'a. So they're running away from the rituals and so on, because the rituals has been annihilated. There's no way there could be ibadah, and so on. So finish this Rajhi. Don't read it to the end. It is there. Anyone can read it. The rest is blubbery. It's just. Yeah.
I'll read your comment on it then.
Yeah.
Abdulaziz Ar-Raji.
There will be a bracket there. Finish the quoted text. I usually make this sentence to make it clear at the end of the quoted text. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell because they made indentations. So this is your section now. So Abdulaziz Ar-Raji is from the Contemporary Totems of Wahhabism. From the aforementioned lengthy excerpt, he furnishes us with several points. The first of which is, in their viewpoint, is the following: Tawheed al-Uluhiyya equals Tawheed al-Ibadah equals Tawheed of Allah by way of the acts of his servants. In other words, by way of acts undertaken by your own volition, be that prayer, fasting, charity, undertaking pilgrimage, and the like, enjoining the good, forbidding the evil, and refraining from what is that which is prohibited and additional ways to draw closer to Allah. The Tawheed of Allah by way of these actions is that they are dedicated for His sake, seeking His pleasure and the hereafter. This is what is Tawheed al-Ibadah. Regarding the second and third points arising from this, we have the blind assertion that the Kuffar, the Quraysh, acknowledged Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, bar the name Ar-Rahman, out of obstinacy and stubbornness. And lastly, Tawheed al-Uluhiyya is construed as the beginning and the end of the deen, its inward and outward aspects, while at the same time being the paramount and last call of the prophets, the departure point on the spiritual pathway, the opening juncture for the seeker on her journey to Allah. It is also the first requirement for entrance into Islam and the final point at his departure from it. Next, we have the following citation, which is found in Al-Intisar أهل السنة والحديث في رد أباطيل Hassan al-Maliki by Abd al-Muhsin ibn Hamd al-Abbad al-Badr. It outlines the confirmation of what has been previously mentioned, together with the claim yet again that it is based upon a comprehensive review of the text of the Revelation, the Quran, and the Prophetic Sunnah. Okay, this one's not as long, so I can just go through it. The divisions of Tawheed as per Ahl Sunnah are threefold: Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Uluhiyya, Asma Sifat. Regarding al-Uluhiyya, it is the Tawheed of Allah by way of the acts of His servants, like ad-dua, seeking help, refuge, the offering of sacrificing, making vows in other forms stemming from the divisions of ibadah. It is required that all of them must be directed by the servant exclusive to Allah, without associating any partner with Him concerning that. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is the Tawheed of Allah by way of His actions, like the matter of creation, providing provision, bestowing of life and death, governance of the universe, and other than that, by way of acts that are unique to Allah in that respect, and He has no partner in relation to them. Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat is confirming that Allah has confirmed for Himself and what His Messenger has too regarding names and attributes, which is all within a matter befitting the perfection and majesty of Allah. It is not likening Him to His creation, nor seeking to delve into their nature, nor outright denial or distortion of their meaning. The divisions or categories of Tawheed are established upon a comprehensive review of the text, the book, and the Sunnah. That much is clear from the opening chapter of the
Comprehensive
Quran.
review. We'll see the comprehensive review, inshallah, the rest of the book.
The book, and that much is clear from the opening chapter of the Quran. It is the last, both encompassing the divisions of Tawheed being threefold. This is your comment. Here, emphasis here is seen from the author seeking to reason that the tripartite type definition of Tawheed is based upon an inductive approach, istiqrar, gleaned from the text of Revelation. His son Abdul Razak ibn Abdul Muhsin al-Badr argues in his work Al-Qawl As-Sadid fi Rad ala min Ankar Taqsim At-Tawheed. This is from his book. The writer Hassan ibn Ali as-Saqaf said on page 3, this is a concise and illuminating work through which I have argued for the invalidation of Trinitarian categorization of Tawheed into Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Uluhiyya, Asma wa Sifat. I say the matter of the Trinity is an abhorrent aqidah of the Christians, in which they base their belief in three gods, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Allah has declared them as kuffar in His revelation, which is clearly established. Glory be unto Allah. These people who say that Allah is the third of the three are defying the truth. There is only one God. If they persist in what they are saying, a painful punishment will afflict those of them who persist. With regards to dividing Tawheed into three categories, or into two categories, namely Tawheed al-Ma'rifah wal-Ithbat, and it is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, and Tawheed al-Irada, and it's Tawheed al-Irada wa Talb, and Talab, and Tawheed al-Uluhiyya. This is the Aqeedah of all Muslims, meaning the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger, except for the misguided innovators. Is his contention the fact that did this guy just contend the fact that it's three divisions and it's too close to the Trinity?
Possibly, but that's essentially saying that the Trinity of the Christian, that's not a good argument. This is again rhetoric, counter rhetoric, which leads nowhere, just going in circles. That's the reason that persisted, because since Muhammad Wahab, nobody answered really, probably because the other side is also as bad and and following their sheikhs and imams blindly without scrutinizing things properly. The Wahhabi is following in that Ibn Taymiyyah essentially and sharpening it and claiming that's based his ingenious, he comprehensively study what the Salaf said, which is not true. And then when transpired by checking whatever before the year 500, 600 was there, nobody spoke about these tripartite of Tawheed. If they find something which smells to these three, they are jubilant. They found an odd statement from, I think, the Judge Abu Yusuf, the student of Abu Hanifa, which may understood that this is not even called Tawheed, that there are three things to be considered about deen and things like that. And they thought, this is our three division. It's already the Salaf. Abu Yusuf said it or something like that. They were jubilant. It is not that. We answered that also later in the book. But the later generation after Ibn Taymiyyah, many answered them, but nobody really made it precise properly. And then when Ibn Abdul Wahhab came, there most of them were in the bottom of the intellectualism anyway. Since he had the sword and the conquest of Al Saud of Hijaz and so on, they were defeated after that. The third Saudi state was successful and got these tons of money, and because start printing these books and pamphlets, it's spread widely. Because most people are simple-minded. I thought, this is the Saudi regime is the one who applies Islam in every letter, and women are covered and things like that. That's a model to follow. So that division must be valid somehow. That's a common simple Muslim. Really, the start shaking was with Hassan al-Maliki. Hassan al-Maliki is the one who started shaking that, but his problem is that he slightly inclined to be the Shia point of view in certain issues without good evidence, and making that an important issue which can invite them to accuse him to be a Shia. He did not start from the fundamental principles without going with that. So he mixed that with that, and they start slandering him and answering him. But his arguments are quite good. I think we are the first one who does it in a way which is simply, and that's the reason they have responded to Hassan al-Maliki, catching him in certain points which are weak or some point most Muslims will not like and so on, rhetorically or something like that. In our case, nobody answered with a name, Rad al-Mas'ari or something like that. That's it. Except one called Al-Atabi, who wrote something in 20 years ago and found no acceptance anywhere, died out. Which is called Al-Qasf al-Shadid al-Mas'ari Sahib al-Tandid. The strict bombing on al-Mas'ari, the one who calls for Tandid, for shirk. Tandid, that Allah has partners. And that's what he tries. But even that did not do anything relevant. Nobody of value or importance or a master degree or a PhD is written as a response. Because this is nothing really to respond, not because greatness or something, but nothing there, because we went to the deep root of the problem. For example, the issue of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, we went to the Shirk al-Arab historically, and also the ayat, and which ayah doesn't imply Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, even in the definition. It implies certain things in a certain context, and we clarified that sufficiently. So they're at loss now. So they will still what they call Rububiyyah. Secondly, what they call Rububiyyah is actually Ilahiyya, according to the ayah in Surah Al-Mu'minun, which is devastating for them. It's finished them completely off. They never considered that ayah or took it into consideration. That the word Ilah is used there. That's what we need. The evidence there of unity of the Ilah because of tamanu', mutual exclusion of the alleged gods, where they are equal in power and so on. That's clear. This is a logical argument of stunning strength. But we're not going to the depth of the argument that the necessity existing with only one and has no substance, nothing like that. It's only one, and that's it. That's very deep. But the ayah goes something which everyone recognizes immediately as impossible, that there's various deities of equal power. And if they're not equal power, then only the most powerful is the one. The others cannot be Allah. And that's all about divine action and creation taking this universe and going away. It has nothing to do with anybody worshipping him or admiring him or knowing about him. It's completely independent from the action of the creation. It's purely the divine himself and his action. And the other part, which is someone descending from a divine being, denied that there is a divine substance which can be shared, but in the form of a report only, in the form of a logical argument. This logical argument requires samad and explanation of samad, and that required is enough to say Allah is samad. That's enough for that level. And later on, it will develop that this means ultimately absolute samad means absolutely is necessarily existing, and this cannot be split to absolutely simple and so on. So it cannot have a son. And but with the necessity, because it's necessarily existing and exists in eternity, is no parents. لم يلد ولم يولد. Neither he's taken birth from anyone before him, otherwise these are the original ones, nor he gives birth, because it's impossible for his divine being as existing to have offspring or split or procreate by any meaning of procreation and splitting. But it is a bit deep. So the Quran does what the argument of mutual exclusion is more than enough for Tawheed, for the Quran. And in that, for the bad luck of Ibn Taymiyyah, he used the Quran used the word ilah. And this is really what ilah means in the final development until when the Quran came down. Before that, ilah and Rabb were mixed. And they are relatively to be mixed somewhere there, but ilah is unique. Originally, it was the same meaning like Rabb, El and Lord and so on, Elohim, similar. And then developed bit by bit. Even the divine name, dedicated divine name, was not available until the time of Musa. Then a divine name developed and it developed into Allah in Aramaic, the name used by Isa, and to Allah in Arabic. And then it was then the two concepts are sufficiently separated by various roundabout ways, because if you go to philosophical separation, it's very difficult. But a roundabout way is the Ayat al-Tamanu, which smashed all of that, finished that community. But I think we mentioned that in evidence of Tawheed. There's a reason I think we did not pass on that sufficiently. Maybe they abridged it somehow. Anyway, we may repeat it again, go to the evidence section at the end once more, but this is the most fundamental part. And in the discussion about ilah and the refuting of Ibn Taymiyyah, his evidence, the way he developed the evidence is excellent. However, everywhere in his discourse, I copied it completely. I said that's taken, mixing from essentially repeating the same words, essentially in paragraphs everywhere in various places. Excellent argument, rationally, absolutely unattackable. But he has only one variation which shows what is the problem, where the problem came. Everywhere he says there were two ilahs and so on, this will happen, this will happen. He says, if there are two Rabb, and the ayah says ilah, 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 ilah. So question to Ibn Taymiyyah, why didn't you use ilah as in the ayah? Do you think you have a better expression than the Quran? Or you want to correct the Quran? I don't think he did it deliberately, otherwise clearly a kafir. But he's so blinded that he thinks in that context, ilah meaning Rabb. Because he says sometimes ilah and Rabb are the same, sometimes different. So in that context, I'm the same. That was not enough to wake him to the problem. That context, there's nothing, no action of the creation mentioned. Absolutely nothing. Only the divine beings allegedly, and showing that it cannot exist except one. And the offspring is being denied by his father that it exists. That's all what is there. But he failed to see this point. But you cannot do that with the Quran. You can't do it with scholarly work. The scholar use this word and this word a little bit liberal, but the Quran is not liberal. Every word and every letter in its place. By necessity. Because they revealed from the one who's allegedly, you claim you believe in him, being the necessary, existing, the eternal, the one who created the language and created Adam and taught him how to name things. I mean, taught him the language. So the language is his own creation. He knows every bit of it, what it does mean. The Quran enshrines this language. And it's the source of the Arabic language, the first word. Then the Arab speaker and poetry is an additional source, adding icing on the cake. But the cake is already there. The Quran itself is the Arabic language. All rules of nahu and so on, and tasrif and conjugation are there. Declination, all is there. That's why the initial people of nahu, the moment they were forced to think about that, in one generation they developed the complete grammar theory. remains just the various words of Arabic. We have to collect from the Arabs because the Quran does not have that many different words, a couple of thousands. And the roots, barely above 500. It's amazing, stunningly few. But someone should count that really to check what other people have said. Very small amount of words and express all these enormous meanings. That's one part of the miracles in the Quran, but someone sit on that and really do it now. Going through, for example, the index, the Fihris, or the index or the Fihris or the index of the Quran by Ahmed Fahd Abdel Baqi. And go record like several columns, one column, the words themselves, the number of the words, and second one, the roots of these words come to, and then see how many different words you have. For example, اليوم, اليوم, and so on. Then you find the number, for example. And then, مثلا الذكر, you find the dhikr in various places, but it has several meanings, but you count all of them and things like that. It needs a bit of work. I think if someone have the patience and the endurance, I started this work, but I felt it will take sitting on that matter for several weeks. Maybe I'm mistaken, maybe 1 week will be enough. And I thought there are pressing things, following the news, following what's going on, following the book of Tawheed, editing and so on. I thought that's more rewarding. But this is also very important, I think, which will bring some stunning information about the nature of the Quran forward. So there's no letter or no word which should be ignored. But people come from certain imagination and they don't read exactly what's in front of them. And then they go astray. Sometimes they're going astray is a minimal point, no problem. Sometimes it is such a point which could reach the level of demolishing Islam altogether. Yeah? And that's what the Wahhabi reached. Ibn Taymiyyah came close to demolishing Islam, but he was still cautious enough to make it bid'ah and things like that. They came, no, this is even the translation with Allah Muhammad Rasulullah, and many people translating, there's no God or deity worth of worship. This is negating the Shahadat Tawheed. That's not the Shahadat Tawheed which the Quran says. اعلموا أنه لا إله إلا الله. It could not have been hidden from the Quran that the worthy of worship should belong there. No. So how come that you add that in the translation? That's the virus infects some brains and think this is natural. It's not natural. But recently, in the last 10, 15 years, Braille, and Dubandi and others started waking up. This is the wrong translation. They say, La ilah, there's no deity except Allah. Or there is no God, written small, except God with a capital G. That's correct. The moment you add worthy of worship, you destroy Tawheed. It's forward Islamic Tawheed. And you open the door for the Wahhabi fallacies, which ultimately will end if you do it step by step properly. It will end by you leaving Islam and entering in Kufr. But we'll discuss that also in the book. So that's it. So I mentioned these texts so that we conserve them in our book. So if they remove these books or they get extinct, say, no, it is here. We have it here also. That's one of the reasons that when I mention a hadith, I mention it in full and the reference and so on. Although I could say, see Bukhari and so on, I just mentioned the paragraph or the section. I prefer that so we have another record, which is very useful. Sometimes the original books get destroyed, disappear. Another book survives in which you find another isnad. Like, for example, if you go to the Muhalla Ibn Hazm for fiqh, he mentioned plenty of hadith. Some of them, the one we have in various books, and some from other channels. They have a new isnad there. That's a great gain. If you said, according to Abu Dawood and other sources, that would not be the case. So the Western way of referencing is miserable. Our way of referencing is much better. It makes things a little bit longer. We have to record it in your own writing. You don't rely on other writing to be available 100 or 500 years later. Yours maybe disappear also, but if it doesn't disappear, it will be there giving testimony for something which otherwise would have been missed. That's the way to go. Mm-hmm. Okay. Did we finish with this Rajhi or this response to Saqqaf and so on? A Saqqaf point of view, that's like the Trinity and so on, is just a rhetoric attack. That has no value. You can do it to make jokes about them. Yes, sometimes it's okay to make jokes, but it is not an argument. Nothing worthy of really consideration in a rational and proper discourse. And using it in an argument specifically with the intention that is really an argument is essentially that you are not doing what Allah ordered. جادلهم بالتي أحسن. Dispute with them or do jadal or the dialogue with them in the best, most possible and beautiful form. One of it is that it should be only objective things, and slander and counter slander should be avoided. If the other side resort to slander, which cannot be responded to, you may slander back or stand up, say, until we get to a reasonable dialogue based on rationality. I'm leaving. When you are ready for a reasonable dialogue, call me back, I will come. Yeah, for example, that's جادلهم بالتي أحسن. That's not جدال بالتي أحسن. Mentioning that's like Trinity and etc. That's not a Trinity, something completely different. But it's a good slander, if needed sometimes, or as a joke. It's okay. Okay. Carry on.
This is just to the conclusion now. Conclusions. In the round, the texts which have been quoted in this chapter should provide sufficient clarity to outline the true nature of statements made by the adherents of Wahhabism. Hence, we would argue, and our reliance is totally upon Allah the Almighty, that the tripartite division of Tawheed as presented and clung to by the sect of Wahhabism is totally flawed. It is invalid. It is dangerously misleading, and on account of that, it has to be abandoned completely. Broadly, its purported content does not accurately align with the meanings of the terms that are used within it, neither in the classical Arabic language in which the Quran was revealed, nor in the legal terminology to which Islam has stipulated. This, of course, always taking precedent over linguistic custom.
Yeah.
In relation to the notion of al-uluhiyya, divinity, it mandates the notion that God, al-ilah, must be that which is worshipped, al-ma'bud. Following this line of reasoning constitutes one of the statements of kufr, as it will be outlined conclusively in this present volume. It is misleading and false, given that it doesn't accurately describe the reality of the shirk which existed amongst the Arabs. Rather, it obstinately clings to the false notion that the Arabs, by and large, had no shirk whatsoever in terms of rububiyyah. That lordship, that denial flatly contradicts well-established facts from the historical record, which are known from definitive concurrent transmission. Worse still, clinging to this naturally leads to open opposition to the text of the Quran, again, which is a matter of kufr. The tripart division is an inversion. It places the matter of al-rububiyyah before that of al-uluhiyyah, resultant from their claim that lordship entails divinity and not the other way round. Moreover, there is no consistent compartmentalization of each of the divisions with clear overlaps occurring. It is necessary.
Also, there's a disrespect of the words and as they come in the Quran. These words having ma'na shar'i in the Quran. You are not at liberty to give them another meaning. You say, is this a salah? Is this an agreement of scholars? Or you can have a word used for something else, translated because of the necessity of describing a certain discipline of knowledge. But yeah, that's permissible unless these words have been already given a certain meaning from a divine revelation. Then you are not at liberty to say, oh, I will define Rabb again like this and this. That's not permissible, because if you say Rabb, people will refer to Rabb al-Alamin and the Rabb in the Quran. And you cannot transgress the limits there and the meaning of that. If you say Ilah, they will refer the last definition from heaven and will establish you cannot transgress and leave is that. And so on. That's it. That's a limitation. Other words you can, for example, let us say what a word in the Quran, for example. Another word which the Sharia did not give a specific meaning or give like salah. If you say salah now, everyone thinks about the proper salah with takbir and sujood and ruku. Or the original meaning is just prayer or something like that. That's already done by the, you cannot use salah now for something else. neither the original language or the new language. Okay, Salah Ibrahimi and so on, the dua connected to Ibrahim, the famous one, the Wood Sharif, for example. But you're going to use it for something else. It's out of question. But something else which is used with specific meaning in the Quran, and the Arab habit is to use this thing, you can translate it with something else, although it's a bit dangerous sometimes, is that it may be relying on some misconception. For example, using nasiha as advice. And but the Quran never used the word nasiha, and nasiha means sincerity, good faith. And Salih told his people, ولكن لا تحبون الناصحين. You don't love a sincere caller. I am sincere to you. I want your best. I want to save you. I want to help you. Don't come with bad intention. I'm genuinely interested in your saving. He did not say I am advising you. He may say that other. What is the word used for advice in the Quran? The words we use now, advising someone or admonishing and so on, is the word used wa'ad. Wa'ad has been slimmed down with that if someone come to the pulpit and talk about akhirah and beware Jahannam and so on, they call it that wa'ad. No, it's not that only. When you talk about women who are rebelling against intercourse with their husband with no good excuse, because this is one of their obligations. It's only for obligation actually for the wife, but we are not discussing this topic. He said, start with it. I would say start with advising them. Not reminding with akhir, remind also this life cannot continue this way. I may go and marry someone else. You are not doing your duty and so on. Also remind of akhirah. Your obligation is that you are violating your obligation. All of that in the mix, in the wa'ad. فَعِظُوهُنَّ وَهَجُرُهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. If that doesn't help, then show them that you are not exercising your right for intercourse. You are not desperate to have it from here. You can separate from here. But what separates inside the house. You cannot leave the house and sleep outside. That's not allowed. You sleep only in the same house. Maybe in another floor if it's a multi-story house. But in the house. The night is the right of the wife. Even if she's rebellious, you stay in the house. But after that, it seems to be that there's some sort of psychological problem with some women. After that, if they don't come to their senses, a good slap on the bum will sort them out. That's for the فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. If they obey after that, stop all of that. If not, then you have to intermediary mediating and so on, or divorce. And so you can exercise divorce one-sided. But you think maybe this is bad for some reason, because if she's a relative, a cousin or something like that, or from the same tribe, or the daughter of the tribe shifted in, may make things inside the tribes sour. You don't have, then you call for mediation. And one from her side is most likely a tribal shifting. So he will see clearly this woman is not sortable. And then if after that they decide for separation, then the tribe shifting say, this woman is a problem. We have decided that they should separate. That's fine. That's the reason some people will not go for direct divorce, or say, I spent so much money in life, I cannot afford now to marry another wife and establish a new house. And this house maybe is built partly, or the money is partly owned by her. So it has to be given to her. There's no escape. So divorce will not solve that. And khula, she's not willing for khula. If she's willing, then we make a negotiate issue the money. Neither nor. She's stubborn. So what to do? You do the mediation. One from her family, one from your side. From her side, one from your side. And their decision will be done most likely in such a situation against her. That's the way it goes. That's the way it works, for example. But that's an extension of the issue of فَعِظُوهُنَّ. I mean, advise them, give advice, give nasiha, what we call now nasiha. Is actually فَعِظُوهُنَّ, يعني advise them. And every time you give maw'idha or nasiha as a Muslim, it must be in good faith. If you give it in bad faith, you are violating one of the principles of Islam, that you have to have good faith to the others. Otherwise, you are cheating and you are stabbing in the back. And this is a grave crime in a way. So no need to say with sincerity. But when the Prophet say, أَنَا لَكُمْ مِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ أَنَا لَكُمْ نَاصِحٌ أَمِينٌ وَأَنصَحُ لَكُمْ وَأَخْشَى مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, meaning I am not just advising and making maw'idha, I am internally, my heart is full with you, is sincere. I want you the best for you. I don't want to be your leader. I don't want you to have money. I don't nothing. I want your saving. I really love you. I identify your benefit as it is my benefit. That's I mean أنصح لكم. Not that I'm indulged in موعظة. He's definitely doing some موعظة, some advice. No doubt about that. No, but that's not it. The meaning of نصحين. لكن لا تحبون نصحين. You don't love sincere advisor. You don't love sincerity. You prefer the people who cheat you and stab you in the back just because they are good demagogues and good speaker. No, for example, that's what the prophets mean. That's example where how using a word in rather the original meaning may obscure some things in the Quran and things like that. But independent of that, general principle that every discipline in science may invent words or use old words in another as long as this is already well established use to define things in that new discipline. So if you do anatomy, you need to name the various muscles. The language doesn't have a name for the muscles. So you maybe invent a name like the supporting muscle, the secondary muscle and things like that. You find the word suitable for that and things like that. That's what when they say لا مشاحة في الاصطلاح. There should be no argument about a convention if you define it properly. There's no problem. But this is not an issue there. This issue, these concepts have been defined quite sharply and distinctly by the Quran. You cannot deviate from that. Unless you think the Quran is from Muhammad, then we're not talking about Islam, we're talking about something else. We have to go to the evidences of prophethood and the divine origin of the Quran. Something else. Then we have to shift the battlefield. It's another battlefield altogether. So that's all. That claiming that Ilah is the Ma'bud, the one who is worshipped is an Ilah, that by act of worship you turn something into Ilah. When you worship it, which is the conclusion that they claim, or the Ilah is the one worshipped one, all of them end, if you do the logical conclusion, that end in statements of kufr. That we don't declare the Wahhabi kafir because the conclusion requires depth of analysis and going deeper. And not everyone is capable, so they may take it at face and think, no, it's fine, it's okay. While they're not aware about the fundamental contradiction. You cannot say someone, your statement end in kufr, so you are a kafir. That's not correct. Your statement end in kufr, wake up and retreat from that and reanalyze again. That's the way. If he insists after that, and clearly he is not listening, then we are dealing with some type of kufr, either rejection or stubbornness or something like that. But only after clarification, not just because it leads to that, then they must be kafir. No, that would be unfair and will be unrealistic. That's not the way revelation works. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'll just finish the last. It's only 2 short paragraphs, and then people want to ask questions each other. Okay. The tripartite division is an inversion. In an inversion, it places a matter of rububiyyah before that of uluhiyyah, resulting from the claim that lordship entails divinity and not the other way around. Moreover, there is no clear distinct compartmentalization of each of the divisions with clear overlaps occurring. It is neither inclusive nor is it exhaustive. It seeks to include matters within the bounds of Tawheed, other areas that do not specifically belong to it. One also can clearly discern that significant aspects of Tawheed are given no attention whatsoever within its rigid, flawed boundaries. And finally, it has resulted in grievous harm and falsehoods.
Yeah. The result of falsehood, if you start with falsehood, you get everything possible. Harm, evil, whatever. You have to start with good premises and develop correctly, then you end with good results. Otherwise, you never get good results except just by fantastic accident. That's it. Only by fantastic accident.
And finally, it has resulted in grievous harm and falsehoods. Most notably, this has been done with the leveling takfir against Muslims en masse, followed by the wielding the sword with unspeakable violence against them. Yeah. When the meaning of the term Lord, Rabb, and God, deity, Ilah, are thoroughly analyzed, the fundamental flaws underpinning the tripartite division become readily evident. These terms are not wordings which sit outside of the corpus of the Arabic language, let alone the peak of its eloquence, the text of the Quran, and they were utilized by the Arabs during the era of revelation.
Yeah. what we have, let me just summarize quickly why is uluhiyya is ahead of rububiyyah in the sense as the Quran defined, because the ayat al-tamanu shows clearly that if there are two deities, two ilah, not Rabb, like Ibn Taymiyyah twisted the word out its place, like that, and who is everywhere, that the messenger calling the people أنه لا إله إلا أنا, to Musa, إني أرى الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. All in this لا إله إلا أنا, use the word ilah everywhere in this Shahadat Tawheed is لا إله, not la Rabb, because there may be sub categories of Rabb, but ilah is only one category, and that's clarified by ayat al-tamanu in the concept of the Quran. What the mushrikeen thinks, what their mind works, confused, not confused, it's expected to be confused and upside down anyway. But the Quran says clearly, if there, Allah did not have any son, that's like a recursive definition. So the son of the ilah is by necessity an ilah. Allah denies that there is a son. So if the father, alleged father, deny I have no sons, then, and we assume he's an ilah, he never dies, so that must be the truth. Because the evidence for that is very deep. It is what Qul Huwallahu Ahad, going a bit deeper. As-Samad lam yalid wa lam yulad, so connected to Samad, but also is not fleshed out, because fleshing it out need very deep concepts like necessity, existing, simplicity, and so on. And that's not, it can be deduced, but need further work for the specialist. As it stands, is enough for everyone. For the one in the back of the camel, even for the philosopher. So this is interesting. Allahu Samad lam yalid wa lam yulad. It seems to be connected to Samad, and the philosopher continue from that. That's the way to go. In this I say, so Allah denies that he has any son, and because we assume by necessity that Allah is truthful and never dies, by necessity, by the way, or not moral issue or so on, it's much deeper than that. But anyway, assume that, then there is no son. Because by necessity, if there is a son, then the son of a deity must be a deity. That's the deep philosophical conclusion. But in here, he is denying, so he has no son, whatever the nature of a son will be. Yeah, Jade. Secondly, and there's a clarification later for the son in other aspects, like adoption and things like that. And this thing, وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَهٍ. We go back to the Arihat, Ilah al-Asli, the original gods, which may have son, may have not son. If there were other deities, which mean by necessity, they have their own creation and their own universal. The Quran says, ذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ. Every creator, every ilah will take his creation and go away. Or they can defeat each other and someone becomes superior. The defeated one cannot be ilah. The top one is the one. So it's one by necessity. In the case of they separate and so on, but it's not possible because the other one will not allow him, if you follow further the details, they will not allow him to get away. Keep here, fight with us. So he cannot get away. So he had to stay, either succeed or defeat. So it's impossible. This is the definition and connected to the creativity. The creation meaning his own creation, his own universe, the initial creator. Inside the universe, maybe sub-creators, cause effects, that's irrelevant. That's the one. Jade. So, and is the only one, and this one tells us clearly that he has no son. So is only one deity, which is not a son of another deity by necessity, according to the ayah, and by development, philosophical development. That's one. Since he's the creator of this universe, then there cannot be another. The one who we call Allah is the creator of this universe. That's the local God, if you wish. Since other universes cannot exist, because another deity cannot exist and can't take things and go away. We have always a stronger proof of necessity existing and so on. But that's a deep philosophy. But it's in the side, it's the most important one. We don't need even tamanu. But ayat tamanu is accessible even to the simple Bedouin. So that was used there, clearly as well. And the other one hinted, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, not wahid, ahad. Single in himself, simple, but hinted. More than that, you cannot tell in the Arabic language to the common people. That has to be philosophically developed later. Allahu Samad, the solid, no holes, meaning completely solid, completely, absolutely solid and perfect. And then how can something like that produce anything? It's just a mathematical point, cannot be split and so on. لم يلد ولم يولد. ولم يكن له كفوا. Nothing in existence could be equivalent to him. Be lower than him, have some attributes similar, but this is an infinite scale of level. Always an infinite gap to the necessary existence, never approachable. You might develop certain attributes and become more perfect and more perfect, but this process never ends. It's infinite. That's also Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. Based on that, He's the creator of this universe. He created for what? Leave that says He created for worship or the people to worship Him or something like that, or becoming His slaves. He created for Himself, because there's no other. In eternity, there's nobody there before the beginning of time. So He doesn't create like the car manufacturer in Japan creating for the market, for people who buy the car. There's nobody there. So He's creating for Himself. So He's the creator and the absolute owner. While the car manufacturer worker in the Japanese factory is not the absolute owner. Obviously, because the material is not from him, etc., but also he's creating for the purpose to sell in the markets. So he's not the absolute owner. He's a relative owner, maybe having a share and he gets a salary for that, for the work and so on. But he's not the absolute owner. He's the absolute owner. Because he is the absolute owner, what we express as the absolute sovereign, the absolute supreme being and commander. If he's commanding anything, if he's a commander, and that's by necessity, or the development show that the system existing must be acting in free will with absolute sovereignty, then whatever under him as a creation is one absolute slave. So they should rationally, that's the first rational command, rationally, not Sharia-wise, regard themselves as their absolute slave and absolutely obliged to submission. Because whatever he commands must be the command, must be respected. And even the question, why is this command going to come? That question will negate reason, as we discussed in the book. You're not even allowed to ask, because the moment you ask, meaning you're doubting your own mind and your own existence. And we develop that in the book in detail. If you say this, he can answer this. If you say this, and for now you end defeated in any case. It's impossible. Because he's the supreme mind. And your mind is a branch, a miniature or projection in the finite of this infinite mind. This cannot override or question the supreme one anyway. It's impossible. So it deserves absolute obedience. Since he's the absolute sovereign, absolute, nobody else has deserved any obedience unless he permits. Now we come to the Sharia. But Sharia-wise, he ordered, I created you that you submit to me. But not by necessity of reason, only that's clear. I recognize that, but do it because I will ask you about that. That's mean the Sharia. There will be accountability about that. That's Sharia. There will be questioning Yawm al-Qiyamah. There's a Qiyamah, there's questioning. Let us make a Sharia injunction. For that is a rational injunction dictated by necessity. Nobody can deny that without denying his own reason. Good? So, Rububiyyah is resulting that he is the original creator of his own universe completely. Then by necessity, then because of that, and there's no other deity whatsoever in this universe or in any other universe, by the way, by Tamanu and by other deeper reasons, is that you are an absolute slave, and if there's any command coming to you, maybe no command will ever come, but if you can't, then you are obliged for absolute obedience. Now, Sharia comes, I say it like in the case of Musa, is very clear. He addressed Musa after the Quran summarized long discussion in the Old Testament, which may be embellished, maybe not. We don't need to care about the details, but it is a long discussion, giving himself a new name. Your grandfathers were calling me Ilah Shaddai, all of that doesn't seem to be fabricated. There's no need to fabricate that, or all of it. Some of it may be fabricated. Ultimately, they say, now if they ask you, what if you all these names are not your real name? Which name should I tell? Tell him, Yahuwah. Most likely mean, I am who I am, send me to you. I am who I am, then it still exists. The eternal send me to you. And most Jews even agree that's the meaning of an eternal. But expressed in the language of the time, that's the way to express. I am who I am. Or he who is he, send me to you. That's the name. And completely new manufactured name. That's my name. Okay? And then the Quran summarizes all of that. Inni ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana. So no deity, creative, and so on there. And since no absolute sovereign except me. Based on this necessity of reason, maybe Musa was not sophisticated enough to understand that. Almost certainly he was not. And nobody was in the world that level. He gives a command. فاعبدني. In other place he explained إن الساعة آتية لا ريب فيها وكاد أخفيها تجزى نفس ما تدفع. Explain him there's an آخر and there's accounting. Based on that, I'm giving now the command to enslave yourself to me completely. Turn the statement of fact that is the absolute sovereign into action from your side, which is exercising the absolute submission and accepting all commands as they come. And since he's absolute sovereign, this excludes any other sovereign, even a minor one, unless I tell you this one is can be accepted as a commander in a certain limited way, because it cannot be unlimited. Otherwise, necessary of reason collapses. And then this way we could say really rububiyyah in the correct sense as mentioned by the Quran. So ownership and hakimiyyah, the absolute right of command, which cannot be challenged, cannot be questioned. Both of them are a result of that is a necessary existing initial creator. It's connected rationally, but it is the result of that. It is a result, logical result of that, not the opposite. You have to be necessarily existing to be the creator to talk about anything related called sovereignty or obedience. And then you go from there. So that's the fundamental error of these choosing the names for these tawheed and regarding them in the same they say and so on. That the Arab has no tawheed or rububiyyah based on the wrong definition of them of rububiyyah, which means khaliqiyyah. And even in that they are wrong, as we discussed in detail. So it is a completeness, these tripartite of tawheed. If you separate them to study in the way I discussed now, fine, okay. Tawheed al-khaliqiyyah to start with. Before the tawheed and that, necessary existing, eternal, things like that, you can. And there is no offspring and so on. Then you do the philosophical deep way with beginning. And then you don't need tamana, but you can use tamana to show there's only one creator, but you don't need that because you started with the divine essence or niyyah. And also this will exclude offspring, exclude splitting, exclude composition, all of these things. So you don't need that dalil tamana because you started deeper. That a philosopher will do or mutakallim will do. And then clearly he's the only, in eternity, he's the only one there who can create anything. He's the only creator at that time. After that, there are sub-creators based on material given to them, based on power given to them. All of these are limited and contingent. None of them is absolutely solid. None of them is because it contradicts the oneness of necessity existing. And he is then obviously having absolute sovereignty, which is mean complete ownership, absolute genuine fundamental ownership, which cannot envision anything higher and envision it, and a complete right of command and defining good and evil. You don't define good and evil. That's what, if you follow this way, all these arguments for ilhad, that the suffering in the universe, all these based on satanic question. How come that the universe is any evil? You are not allowed to ask this question. It happened from the one who created the universe in such a way. We know now it's a testing universe to soothe the feeling of human beings. Human beings have difficulty in dealing with that. The universe is a testing universe. There are certain evils that, for example, essentially meaning there's a deficiency which cannot be overcome. Even if you make them more perfect, more powerful, then their evil and shortcomings will become even bigger. Increase this, that, and increase because they're contingent. There's no way. That's one part. Another part, really genuine evil, like confronting Allah and disrespecting Him, that's depending upon free will. And in the sight of Allah, free will is such an important value, so important, make you close to the divine, make you like mini divine, if that word makes sense, is the free will. So that is result of free will. If no one is allowed to commit evil, then there's no free will, there's no testing universe. Why the testing universe have you chosen? What a purpose? That's a question which need infinite knowledge with all infinite possibilities available to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no way. He knows because he is the fundamental initial supreme mind, and you are a minor mind depending upon him. If you start questioning the stem, as I gave the example of the stem and the tree, like the monkey on a branch, and someone is passing with a chainsaw, then cut that stem. And you tell him, listen, monkey, if I cut the stem, you will fall and break your neck. Say, no, I will stand aloof by myself. Okay, cut and then let him fall and break his neck. It's not possible. You cannot persist if your root is cut. And if you question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are cutting the root. Because the root is that his knowledge, at least the one in eternity, is as perfect as conceivable, and comprehensive as possible, in such a way that everything in his knowledge must be can be made, must be rational and perfect. You have to accept that. Otherwise, you have to go to a blind, deaf nature. That's why the atheists think they have a solution. But this blind, deaf nature, number one, does not exist. It can be proven to be an impossibility. Secondly, it doesn't solve your problem of suffering and evil. The suffering is there, but in that situation, it is worse. There's no way out of the suffering. It is necessary. Is that a solution? It's not a solution, neither psychologically nor rationally. It's no other way. So you have to accept. You have to accept. And you understand that some, I think, hadith, I think it's authentic, when it says, من لم يرضى بقضائي فليغادر سماعي وأرضي. There's no other way. You have to, because you are in the sama and earth. You are part of this system. And if you assume the creator of the system is perfect and in knowledge, by necessity, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. He's necessarily existing. So if he has knowledge, his knowledge is perfect. And if he has certain virtue, which he regards as virtue, and he regards as virtue, he has it to utmost possible, especially in matter of the rationality. His rationality to defeat any finite rationality. So how can you come and ask? Yes, human continue asking, and you give the same answer. Some of it is because the nature of contingency entails by necessity some kind of deficiency. We have to struggle with that. But exist with some deficiency is better than not exist at all. That's again in the scale of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, he would have not created and then enjoy his own existence alone, having a mathematical crossword puzzle which expand at infinity. I can work for all infinite times. No problem. He can do that. That's the reason he said, when say, ما خلق السماوات والأرض لاعبين. This is not for enjoyment, for game. لو أردنا أن نتخذ لهوا لاتخذناه من لدنا إن كنا فاعلين. If you want lahu, enjoyment, we can have lahu from ladunna, not touching any creator. The best thing come to my mind, we invent an infinite language, stage by stage, because it's not created immediately, stage by stage, and the crossword puzzle who extend along the diagonal. You can do that for infinite time and never ending, and enjoy yourself. He enjoy yourself, whatever you, if he wanted to have enjoy. But he doesn't. The nature of perfect mind is not that what we. And they say, بل نقذف بالحق على الباطل, because this is batil. It doesn't fit the supreme mind. But he tells us clearly what's it. He could have lahu, which can keep him busy and enjoying for all eternity. But he shows otherwise. So there's a purpose beside creating being who have suffering, who have free will, have failing, advancing, and so on. For him is that a higher value based on the nature of the possible universes and their never-ending contingencies and possibilities. And he shows that because of his own measures and system of evaluation, not because of ours. We were not there anyway. Nobody is there anyway. But it cannot be taken into consideration anyway. So that's the way to go. If you build this way, all these things are resolved in a reasonable way. Some of them remain a psychological problem, like a problem with suffering. Yes, it is a problem. It is a bigger problem for the people. For us Muslims, it's not really that big a problem. There was never a reason for someone to go to become atheist because the problem was suffering. Why is that the main problem, leaving many Western scholars or the Bible and so on, tending at the end to atheism? Because the whole Christianity is based on that the supreme being sent his son to die on the cross to save humanity. So he's so good that he's willing to kill his own son for our sake. Or he come himself, because himself he's his own son in a complicated way, willing to kill himself for ourselves. So he's what they call good, absolutely good. So if they discuss any divine attribute, they will put goodness. And goodness in the same they imagine goodness is. Not in any fundamental connected to necessity of reason. But if the reality in the world show that, why isn't the tsunami? It's easier than dying on the cross. Why is that ongoing? And the question will continue. What, in the first place, how come that he let Adam fall in the sin? How come that he let the snake or the devil or whatever seduce him? He could have prevented that. Or he is not of perfect power. So he's not the real God. There's something else there. Or a rebellious entity, a creation, possibly a creation, rebelled and instead created this current universe. That's the point of view which Marcion could not escape. If we accept that the Son of God died on the cross, this is really the ultimate goodness, because he started from values instead of starting from ontology, existence. If that's true, and he believed that that's true, and he's completely Paulian, he said Paul was not consistent. He must go one step further. So what he did is saying all the Old Testament and all the prophets and all the creation in the world is evil, and created with some kind of a semi-satanic demiurge. That's the solution. So the Old Testament is nothing. It's a revelation of the devil. And the reason when he edited the books before him, he removed everything which seems to be praising the Old Testament or the God of the Old Testament or the ancient prophets. He removed that because it can't be the good God. So it started with good according to human or human feeling and appreciation, not according to necessity of reason. The moment you start with this suffering and white tsunami and how this, you are digging your own grave right away. You will never get out. So if someone starts with this, stop here, let's start how the universe started and how things develop, what's going on. Has it purpose or no purpose? Or do we have two deities, good one and bad one? And how could they coexist? And so on. And refute that. And then he is stuck. The only escape remaining for that was happened to great Bible scholar like Bart Ehrman. He's a good man, seemed to be a very good man and very sophisticated and so on. He started as a fundamentalist. That's what killed him. And then studied, recognized that the text at hand cannot be regarded as a divine inspiration. So he started studying it meticulously, going back, even assuming the usual theory that all these are written in the 1st century, which is most likely false. They're written in the 2nd century, but assume that, etc., etc. But ultimately, he got stuck with the issue of if that's have any joint truth, is that the good God, Isa, is the best God possible, willing to die on the cross for us. So this is a tall order, a God dying for us. So why not prevent tsunami? Why is this? How the suffering has come with such a God? Marcion's solution is there's a demiurge. I did not explain how the demiurge came. So he is essentially pagan, straight out pagan. While Paul said monotheist by calling God one God, and Isa is Lord. Who keeping Lord very obscure. But only one place he had saying he embodied or he represent the full Godhead. This could be understood that the full Godhead is in him with the strict sense, or metaphorically, he saw so many virtues and nice aspects that as if the goodness and Godhead radiates through him. In either case, it is, you start the way to the abyss, but he did not go. But still for him, the Old Testament is important, and he mentioned prophecies of the Old Testament and mentioned the law, and he hates the law, obviously. He said, with the death on the cross, various things achieved. First of all, the original sin is gone. I don't think if Paul is specified, it's for us. He suffered for us. And one of the things he specifically say is that on the cross, according to the Old Testament, the Old Law, he is cursed. So all the curses in the universe after him has been attracted to him. He's like a lightning rod. So all lightnings came on him and directed to the earth. We are not suffering this curse. What is the curse? The curse of Sharia. Sharia is a curse. Alhamdulillah, we have got rid of the Sharia. That's the way human function things. So what is the Old Testament is related to Sharia, forget about it. It's rubbish. What is the prophets and so on, Sharia, prophecies which may be for Isa, we accept that. So file this way, but this way will not work either. And Marcion recognized that there's no way going to work. The situation in the universe does not lend any credibility to this. So the whole universe is bad, and it should. And that's clear in Malcolm church advice, because he became like a bishop of his group, is that they lived as parasites on others, because Malcolm advises people, we have to get everything possible so that this world, this human disappear. So everyone should be celibate. So how to get new recruits and new believer is going to other churches who believe in Christ and attract them to this point of view. So parasitic living. Again, another contradiction in how to carry da'wah. Instead of saying, no need to carry da'wah, let people die by natural causes until nobody lives on earth. But we want to accelerate the process so that demiurge is defeated. Something like that. But if it's the demiurge is defeated, what about the demiurge we are messing around with animals and other creatures who suffer pain and so on? All of these are contradictory things. They will not lead anywhere. They will not stand in a rational scrutiny. And the reason for that, they started with this goodness of God, absolute goodness, in their understanding, not in the understanding suitable for God himself. And he gave in his scripture. That's the reason the Quran avoided using the word good. Used Hasan Khaliqin, Arham al-Rahimin. إن رحمتي سبقت غضبي في الحديث ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء إلى آخره فأكتبها لكذا كذا لكنها وسعت كل شيء في الأصل إلى آخره. So من شر رحمة من شر this من شر this. No obscure term which is not well defined like goodness. So that's the way to go. The way of the hobby is the completely opposite way. It will lead to abyss from another direction. And we'll never enforce and make Tawheed effective in life in such a way which is productive. And they see in the follower of Wahhabism. But in addition, that they read the Quran, do not understand it properly, have shallow understanding, and were willing to be brutal and killing everyone for what they believe they are mushrikeen, even because many people were quite ignorant. So they say, ignorance is not an excuse for shirk. Mushrikeen go to hell anyway, even if they don't receive any message. It's excuse for something else, and so on, contradicting the Quran clearly and obviously. And still, some factions are there in Medina, that's the Islamic University of the Madkhali. They still, when I left Saudi Arabia, at least there were 10 factions fighting each other, Madkhali. The main point of fighting is the issue of al-udhr bil-jahal. There's an excuse by ignorance, and how far it extends or does not extend. Few other points. It's a point of view and ideology which will end in a catastrophe, because it started with evil, with catastrophe, with blood and trunk. So that's the march route we will follow, inshallah. So we finish this paragraph and this chapter.
We finished yet. So
we can stop here and get questions if needed.
Yeah. There's one brother wants to speak to you in Arabic, so I'm going to let him go first, inshallah. Yeah. So just for next week, then we will be starting on chapter 3, page 17. Okay. So there's a brother wants to speak and ask a question in Arabic. It's not related to Tawheed, but the brother is waiting very patiently. So if that's okay with you. Brother, you can unmute if you are able to understand. Let me just message him. He can't really speak English.
But as a rule, he should maybe listen to Khamisiyya, the Khamis, the one Hijazi. There he can talk and ask in Arabic, because we want also the audience to benefit. But we'll let it pass this time. In the future, please no Arabic questions. Not because the Arabic language is inferior, it's a superior language by Allah design, not by the Arabs are superior. They are as dumb and good as bad as other nations. Not but with the racism you find in many classical fuqaha. So there was a discussion enterprise about that point. We'll come to that. This is a footnote of Tawheed, so we'll leave that later.
If the brother can, brother, if you, can you hear us? Okay, so we'll let a couple of people go first. So whenever the brother is asked, whenever you're able to unmute, feel free. I'll let other people go first now, inshallah, then, until he's ready. Okay, far away.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. On the topic, when you raised about slander, when you mentioned the ayah, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, can you explain how you can use slander? Because I didn't get the points.
If they slander you during the discussion or use slanderous terms, which is not objective discussion, then you have the option to slander back. That's it. As you have been, if you have been oppressed and attacked, you can make a counteract similar to him. Another option, which is better, which is the way the Prophet said, he just stand up and leave. When you come to your senses, we sit and discuss. That's not the way it goes. I don't think that anyone dared to do some slander in his presence and so on. They were all in a state of shock, what he says. And they came back with changed character and confused and shocked. And then Mushrikeen worked on them to stabilize them. But that's the Prophet, and he has certain radiation we don't have. It may happen very well, like the guy who said, pedophilia consummated the marriage by 12, according to the best reports you have. And he said, okay, why is that wrong? Your God impregnated Maryam without consulting her by force when he was 12. Why is your God allowed to do what his prophets are not allowed to do what your God did to Maryam? That's so very slanderous. That's not an argument. But punishing him by, if you use such filthy arguments, I will be able to do filthy arguments against you, for example. But this is an extreme example. I would say, okay, we come to pedophilia and so on, bye-bye, salam alaikum. Or you could say pedophilia is rampant in the Old Testament. Look at the Talmud, look at the Old Testament and the prophets. In which age they married and so on. 6 years in the even Christianity up to the Middle Ages. There are cases recorded and well established, nobody can deny, like King Richard, the Lionheart, married some princess and so on. She was 6 years old. I don't know if he consummated, but he married and she joined his palace. So this is a mute point. Be ashamed of yourself. Something like that. Or if it comes, I would say, if you use it like pedophilia and such slanderous word. If he says, how can he marry an underage and so on? Who defined underage and what's the limit? Until very recently, many states of the United States of America allowed marriage down to 6 years. Maybe consummation is not possible, but marriage can be concluded. You go to the church, hubla, flowers, and yeah. So come on, don't come with that stupidity. You are putting yourself down. You expose yourself as an idiot. You don't know your own history and your own religion and your own tradition and your own books, for example. That's it. Why are micromanaging that? In that case, if you don't feel comfortable to retaliate with an equal, reasonable measure, just stand up and say, I'm not in a swearing and slandering campaign. When that ends, I will come back for this discussion. We suspend the meeting and we meet another time when you come with something substantial, not just with slandering and laughable claims. So that's an example. Yeah. But this is depend upon the skill and the proper work of the da'iyah. And we should expect that people of Islam, at least between them, will be that. Unfortunately, this Saqaf and so on, that's the Trinity of the Christian and so on, it's a joke. Should not have come from someone. It's not the way to answer to that. I just mentioned that casually anyway. جدال بالتي أحسن من جدال rationally, composed, bringing arguments, analyzing them. What's your argument, showing where is the flow, what he has overlooked, etc. That's the way to go. Yeah? Okay. So try to avoid being micromanaging all things like that. There are many things from mubahat, you have a wide range. If someone attack you or hurt you, you are allowed to attack him or hate him. But you can't be patient, and this is even having more reward. Read the famous ayah. من اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه مثل ما اعتدى عليكم ولئن صبرتم لهو خير للصابرين.
Okay, brother, fire away, inshallah. The one who wants to speak Arabic, inshallah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
عليكم السلام. دكتور استمر.
تحية لكم طيبة وللأمة الإسلامية جمعاء، وأصلي وأسلم على النبي الثائر وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أستاذ المسعري، لدي سؤال عن الشارع العربي في المغرب الأقصى والثورة التي تحدث به، وما تعليقك عليها؟
هذا the brother is asking about the ongoing demonstrations in the west of Arabia, in Maghreb, Morocco, in the Kingdom of Morocco, and what is the comment on that? I'm observing it, analyzing, see what's going on, and we wanted to comment that in the Diwan al-Hijazi. You have to go to the Diwan al-Hijazi or Tajdeed Media or other channels and watch for the next Thursday. That's what the main topic of next Thursday, inshallah. جيد.
أشكرك وأعتذر جدا عن المقاطعة
أي.
يا أستاذ المسعري، وتحية طيبة لك من العراق ونيابة عن أهل العراق أيضا.
الله يحفظك وسلامك. وضع ما يتعلق بالعراق إذا كان في شيء بالعربي خليه هناك
إن شاء الله. شكرا أستاذ. شكرا.
نحاول أيضا نخلي الناس يدخلوا بصوتهم كذلك، نحاول قدر المستطاع أيضا هناك. أعطي الأخ أبو هاشم لأن هذه قناته في الواقع وأنا بشارك فيها، لكنه تقريبا يعني يوافق على كل هذه الأشياء اللي ما كان متعود عليها قديما. فتح القناة لمن يريد أن يدخل ويتكلم ويضيف وحتى يسجل تسجيل ويرسل مفتوحة جدا. فانتظروا الخميس إن شاء الله. So it is for the West Arabia and this will be discussed in the Diwan al-Hijazi on Thursday. That's in Arabic. Because this seemed to be the main. We wanted to discuss it last Thursday, but the time became tight because we were busy with other things, Trump and Hamas acceptance and all these trickery and cheating going on and all these things, and that took most of the time and few other things. So it's good that it was postponed for next week because you see more what is developing, what's going on, because the regime seemed to be shooting the people now, started some shooting, and this is a sign of things going downhill with the regime, inshallah. But anyway, Thursday.
Where's this in Morocco?
Yeah, in Morocco, yeah, there are demonstrations going now for almost a week. General strikes and so on. But the international and local coverage and Arab coverage is barely, because these criminal regimes and these Western regimes are covering for each other up. Anyway, we discussed that in Arabic, and then maybe I summarize it then in for the English speaker in the Palestine update, because it may become related to Palestine. Because I think soon the issue of Palestine will be raised. Originally, it was issues of salaries, life income, inflation, and things like that. And then Palestine became central. But let's wait for Thursday for the Arabic brother. انتظر يوم الخميس أخونا يتكلم العربية. By the way, the brother is from Iraq, meaning that he is taking care of Muslim affairs, because an Iraqi is far away from Morocco and still is asking. Jazakallah khair. That's good. That's a good sign. Jazakallah khair, Ahmed. Yalla. Next question.
Yeah, so Sheikh, I was just wondering if you could go into. You mentioned when you were talking about treating the parents with ihsan, and then you were mentioning South Asian cultures and stuff, and you were saying that a lot of the hadith regarding the topic have been read upside down. I was wondering if you can go into them briefly, just like what hadith were you talking about that is generally read upside down in regards to obeying the parents.
Brother, do some work, collect all of that so we can do some productive work. According to my memory, there is nowhere, and all of them has been misinterpreted. There is nowhere, obey your parents. You go to your parents, do that. The only thing I remember, obey your father, is that Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As understood being shouted with the parents the correct way. And his father was telling him, for example, wait for me to go to the Prophet. No, I'm not going to wait. I'll go ahead. You finish your wudu and follow me, without screaming or insulting. He thought that's proper. And then Amr ibn al-As complained to the Prophet, and the Prophet smiled and told Abdullah ibn Amr, relying that he's rational and understand correctly, obey your father. He misunderstood that, and to the extreme that he followed him, but did not participate in the battle in Safin, which shows that this example has been considered and related by Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As himself, shows that he is not a faqih. He's an excellent reporter, even better than Abu Hurairah in exactness and isnad and so on. But unfortunately, you cannot rely on his fiqh and understanding. That's all what it shows. Because the Prophet never thought ever that his father would call him in a place which is haram or something. He did not understand. That's it. But collect all things so she had parents and so on. Everywhere warning from عقوق الوالدين. اجتنبوا السبع الموبقات الشرك بالله وعقوق الوالدين. He doesn't say disobedience. عقوق is not disobedience. That's what I mean. So collect what they claim is طاعة, obedience. You will find barely anything. And check the Quran also. Nowhere طاعة is mentioned except in the negative ayah, وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما. In other things, تطيعهما ولا تطيعهما is not an issue. Some people will say, this in only this case you don't obey. How do you know it's in only this case? Where do you get that? Because they say بسموه مفهوم المخالفة. المخالفة is only valid if the opposite of that what you have is the only available. Nothing else is available. But if there are various options there, for example, don't obey them if they want to force you in shirk. But you may or disobey if they ask you to go to Sham and manage their business. Is not addressing that. Maybe you should obey them if he advise you to join the Prophet and fight with him with all your energy. That's a good advice. And you should obey. But obedience there is there for the Amr al-Ilahi, not for them. But they are the conduit that the command come to you. So many options for what they can combat. The only one excluded strictly is جهادك على الفسق. You cannot say مفهوم المخالفة. مفهوم المخالفة is wrong unless the مخالفة is the opposite and there is no other thing, يعني contradiction. The necessary reason dictate if you order this, then the opposite of it, the complete opposite, and with no other options available, is excluded. But if two and more options are available, which one is mentioned as a مخالفة? Then the whole argument falls. Therefore, مفهوم المخالفة and so on is an invalid argument. It's wrong. It's utterly wrong. Yeah, that's it. But you can work on it, and if it bugs you or important, see, I have the feeling that you love micromanaging these things. Go to the hadith, go to what there are many books about al-kabair and so on, siyab al-uquq and so on, and see the examples they give and so on. You will not find anything really persuasive. But go and find. Maybe I'm mistaken. In the Quran, I'm sure there's, except this ayah, there's nothing related, or birr al-walidain, وقضينا أن لا تعبد إلا الله وبالوالدين إحسانا. هذا قضاء الله أن تكون charitable and nice to your parents.
That was the perfect place for Allah to mention ta'ah, if there was any obedience.
And in other places, see Luqman's advice and so on. All of it like that. You see clearly where ta'ah is clear and there's a ta'ah is very specific. Ta'ah is very specific. Yeah.
Ustad, when you mentioned the excuse of shirk, you said the Salafiyya, the Wahhabiyya saying no one's excused of being a mushrik. In the Quran, there's a verse, Alastu bi rabbikum.
Yeah, they invoke that, but that is wrong. That's wrong because we have the clarification ayah.
So
which said ما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا. Later answer that this تعذيب in dunya. تعذيب in dunya is not possible without a messenger. How that a bigger تعذيب in akhirah is possible? This is the people have their brains screwed upside down.
So what is the tafsir?
The ayah meaning in Yawm al-Qiyamah tell them, I gave you an excellent head start, and you made a covenant with me that you acknowledge me that as your Lord. But nobody is conscious about that after birth. So it cannot be invoked to punish them. It's just to tell them, look how miserable you have acted. I gave you an absolutely good head start. Imprinting in your brain or your genes that your Lord is Allah, the ultimate sovereign is Allah. That's imprinted in you. And still against this imprintment, you rebelled and you do not comply. So But you read the ayah, even to the end of تهلكنا ما فعل المبطلون إلى آخره. You will tell them, no, I'm not تهلكنا ما فعل المبطلون or your parents or what you did in ignorance. I destroy you because you reject my messenger. Because that's the first step you should have in acknowledging that I'm your Lord. First step that Allah is your Lord, that He has the absolute right, and He did exercise by sending messenger, and the messenger came to you. وكذلك في سقر ما سلكوا في سقر قال لهم رسول guardian جهنم سير ألم يأتكم ask for easy day of punishment ألم تكن تأتيكم رسل بالبينات قالوا بلى قالوا فادعوا الله سبحانه وتعالى الله تعالى ممكن يرحمكم we don't know but don't expect us to give you any special treatment. Everyone in the hellfire asking for easement will address the guardian of the hellfire and they will tell them according to the Quran this is a khabar متيقن for those enter the hell. As long as they will say, listen, did you not receive messenger getting the evidence and you saw that and interacted with it? Yes. sorry, we can't do anything for you. They already judged and done. So that's a bad argument. Ibn Abbas got it right. Say that's a mithaq al-fitra. That's imprinted in the genes. But it's not enough to produce accountability Yawm al-Qiyamah. The people of Amazon Yawm al-Qiyamah said, we have been isolated from the rest of the world for millennia. And no messenger come to us. Allah knows there is a messenger come to us. Yes, we should not have done that because of this mithaq, but we are oblivious about it. It cannot be done with a Wahhabi thing. The Wahhabi invented this, especially when they tried to invoke the ayah, because they were fighting the people in the remote villages and killing them because they are mushrik. Some people say they're ignorant. You have to educate it first. Say, no need. Shirk, there's no excuse for shirk bijahl. Yeah, you see the point?
Yes.
And usually in Prophet ﷺ, the one he fought them and kafarahum qatalahum, he did not send people to tell them in detail and discuss with them. That's true, because he never fought, he never killed anybody except who was fighting against him, not because they are kafir or mushrik in the first place.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. Whenever I read the riwayat, some of the muhaddithin, they make it seem like that he's fighting them for their shirk and kufr. But when you read it properly, when you read in between the lines, it seems that he's
and
fighting them for
other
their
narrations, it was clear that he never fight anybody except the one who started the fight or joined Quraysh as an ally. It's very clear. Absolutely clear. Absolutely clear. Even we have a statement around Badr al-Ula, the Majdi ibn so and so on al-Juhani was having good relation with Quraysh or good relation with the Muslimin. So he was not Muslim yet. And the Sirah writer say, and Majdi has a good relation with her, and the majority of Juhayna were close in friendship to the Messenger of Allah. مؤمنهم ومشركهم, all of them, mu'min and mushrik. Yeah, he mediated and went between them, and then he to recognize his importance as leadership to Juhayna. Prophet did not that year took the caravan. He could have taken it in Badr al-Ula. But al-Ula was no fight happened because of mediation of Majdi, son of so and so al-Juhani, one leader of Juhayna. And it says clearly the mu'mineen and the mushrikeen of Juhayna. No fight. The only fight mentioned for people of Juhayna seemed to be one branch, a small branch called al-Huruqat. Later, the time where Osama in the age of fighting, that means essentially when he was maybe in the 9th or 10th year, I don't know what happened to them. Maybe the Roman instigated them or gave them money. These started a fight, and he sent the campaign, the famous campaign with Osama leading them. And then the famous story, the reason we know that, the famous story about the man who was killing the Muslim Rights Self Center, and then at the end he saw that they will be defeated. He escaped to a trunk of a tree, threw the sword from his hand, and so seeing Osama coming like a ferocious lion, say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And Osama gave him with a spear. And then they reported to Messenger of Allah this. And he was outraged. And said, Osama, أقتلت بعد قال لا إله إلا الله؟ قالها متعودا واضح، ذبح فينا تذبيحا ما في شك. وبعدين لجأ إلى هذه ويعتصم بالكلمة. قال شققت عن قلبه. أنت تقول حكم بناء على ظنك أنت. إذا تعرف أنه متعود بدليل يقيني شيء آخر، لكن تقول هذا. رمى السيف، خلاص هذه قرينة كافية أنه توقف على القتال. يقول ما زال يؤنبني حتى ظننت أني رجوت أن لم أكن أسلمت قبل ذلك، أنه هذا أول إسلامي حتى يمحو هذه الخطيئة. وهذه أثرت، وفهم أسامة تبين أنه أيضا ضعيف، هذه أثرت عليه ولم ينصر عليه أبي طالب أنه لا يريد أن يقتل المسلم. ارتكب الخطأ نفسه زي عبد الله بن عبد. بهذا ثبت أنه ليس فقيه. من حيث الناريشن ما عنده ناريشن قليلة وكلها تبدو أوثنتيك ومضبوطة، ما في مشكلة. هذا اللي عطله من العمل الصحيح في ذيك الأيام. Because people see an event and they take their mind completely and they get stuck with it. Except a message of Allah, because it's infallible. So we have to take this and this and this, put everything in one table and analyze it all. Otherwise, we'll not get to the truth of the matter. Meaning in the battlefield, for example, many American soldiers, when a car bombed, so when in a column of several cars, if the front car is bombed and destroyed, and they cannot go anywhere, and the back, they expect someone in the back waiting with machine guns in the time of Iraq. Some of them were intelligent enough or know about that. They run to the next masjid and put the weapon, and if someone comes, Nashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And the Iraqi, despite all sorts coming, never touched them. Although it's very clear between the other, that's a muta'awwid. But it doesn't matter. خلاص, la ilaha illallah ta'asam. He put the weapon. هذا most important. The moment you put the weapon, تقول أشهد لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله, انتهى الموضوع. Finish. War is over with this person. Period, full stop. So only I mentioned that not because of issue of protection by La ilaha illallah and so on, and protecting the weapons. I mentioned because it mentioned that Usama was sent to the people of Huruqat from Juhayna. Otherwise, no narration whatsoever, as far as I know, mentioned Juhayna in any war. Although they have mushrikeen until very late. And from early time, the Muslims and the mushrik, and all of them are allies and friends of the Prophet. And they treated them very nicely, including Majdi. He forgo taking the caravan, he would have been able to take the caravan. But his mediation brought the two parties to be disengaged, and the caravan proceeded, and Allah went back home, just to keep the friendship and the good relation with Majdi. And clearly Majdi would not have mediated if he was a Muslim. With him, he should not mediate for the kafir.
There are those who argue, I don't know if you've been exposed to this argument, that they say similar to how after the Anbiya like Nabi Nuh and the other Anbiya like Lot, they do tabligh to their qawm, to their people. And once the tabligh is done, and when the people reject, Allah's adhab comes upon them, yes? So they say, with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the difference was that because he had manpower, the divine punishment was with the swords. So that's how they explain the hadith, where it's reported that the messenger says, I've been commanded by Allah to fight the people until they say La ilaha illallah. So they argue.
But that's a mistake, because that's not the only hadith. The mistake is that hadith is valid like at face. But when Allah said that, he said that in Khaybar, by the way. And before that, he was not fighting the people. The people know what he means. He did not say, in the hadith, until he called La ilaha illallah. He does not mention jizya. He does not mention if they, before the fight started, before I come to the country, they send a letter, say, we are now completely at peace. We are not fighting you ever. Like what happened with the Faris and the Buran, the wise Shahanshah. I don't know what the female of Shahanshah, the queen of Persia. She wrote to the messenger of Allah, listen, what my father did by tearing the letter. I know what's going in Abyssinia. Your relation is excellent. I will, and Baban belong to your deen. I will show that I am willing for the absolute peace by withdrawing the remaining forces in Yemen, in Oman. Oman was occupied by them. And Bahrain was occupied, that's the East Saudi Arabia. Withdraw them completely back to Persia and send the gift, and what accepted, and it was peace. Until the shayateen there, instigated by her, by the cunning Hercules, killed her and starting supporting the Ridda. Then war erupted. But you have to study that. You have to sit on your bum and work. They don't want to work.
Yes.
They want to follow their desire. They want to conquer and kill and justify what Muawiyah and afterward what the kings have been doing. Mostly the policy of kings. Obviously, they sell it to the people. It's jihad and so on.
Fighting the people of Kufr.
Fighting the people of Kufr. How can you rally the people? You must give them something to get them busy with the outside rather than the inside. The reason that Muawiyah, the moment he made a treaty with the Persian, he gave them North Africa. This is hard not to crack. He could not dare touching that until the year of his death or after that. Nothing happened there. It remained outside Muslim control. And you find most history claiming the conquest of North Africa happened there in the year 60 or 58 and onward. It's not true. It was conquered in the time of Uthman, very early even. In a campaign in which Al-Hassan al-Hussein, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Umar, all of these participated. And they reached, except a strong fight with a king representing a vassal of the Romans, Herakl would have died at the time, but his son was there. They defeated him, and he escaped maybe to Europe or somewhere. And then they went smoothly all the way to Tanja. All the north, no fighting with anybody, peace and nice, everything well established. And all that land has been given. Muawiyah withdrew so that he can fight al-Muslimin Ali ibn Abi Talib and pay even jizya to them. The same with when he took power, he started reconquering areas in the east, because this way he can get rid of the Sahaba and big heads which can fight him from Basra and Kufa. In Egypt, there's not very many Sahaba, a few simple-minded like Uqba bin Amir and so on. And he can buy and sell them easily and fool them easily. But there is no way. So he can get them, these areas rebelled and stopped paying jizya without any treaty and so on. Go reconquer them. This may be justified. It's actually re-establishing the conquest of Uthman. At the Roman, he did not do anything except he wanted to break the treaty with them without announcement. But he was stopped by one of the Sahaba, saying, you have to announce it to them properly. You go to Damascus back. He was going with his horses there without announcements. That's not the way you adinhum ala sawa. That's not adinhum ala sawa. That's not ala sawa, not an equality. You go to Damascus, write to them, give sufficient time that the letter reaches them, and they can take their precautions and fortify their borders, then you go. After that, he was doing incursions, calling him Sa'if al-Shatawi, not Shawati. Nothing serious, because mostly people of Sham are sent there just to soothe their feeling for jihad. But any real attempt to conquer anything and control anything, no. No real attempt to defeat the Romans. Why should he should? He has stability in his area, everything is fine. He controls East Anatolia and Armenia, enough money coming, and the whole East has been reconquered. Money is coming in his coffers, and he having ice coming from the mountain, Jabal al-Sheikh in there, coming, and he would drink water with ice at that time. They put ice in rabbit, and then most of it stay ice until he reaches his palace, and he enjoy iced water and so on. Why he should fight? Except to keep opposition busy elsewhere, where it's serious opposition, that's in the East. Egypt doesn't have not very Sahaba who could be a leadership personality leading a rebellion. And a few with some personality, like Uqba bin Amir al-Juhani, is a simple-minded man. He was with Muawiyah, actually. He believed that Muawiyah is right. And then, but still, because he's innocent, and Muawiyah played all kinds of tricks, put him in the governorship after Amr ibn al-As passed away. Amr ibn al-As appointed his son to be after him until the order from Muawiyah comes otherwise. So he wrote to Muawiyah that I'm in my deathbed, I think, and ordered the letter to be sent to you the moment I pass away. And temporarily, to manage the country, Egypt, I appointed my son Abdullah to manage until Muawiyah knows that Abdullah is a poison if he takes. Whatever his limited mentality, he's the one narrated Hadith Taqtuluka al-Fi'a al-Baghiyah, one of them, and confronted Muawiyah with that. So the moment he received that, he said, no. He sent the letter back, appointing Uqba ibn Amir al-Juhani and checking out Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. So he ended nowhere. Now, Uqba ibn Amir, this gullible, simple-minded man, was there. And then he went to, because this is a danger, maybe he awakened, maybe he gets information that Muawiyah is actually the killer of Uthman and so on. So it started to spread, the scholars started collecting this information, especially Yazid ibn Abi Habib al-Masri is the main scholar in Egypt, and a specialist in Syria and collecting information. He's the one beside who killed Uthman and who getting salary from Muawiyah and so on. Beside many things. Anyway, he engaged him in sea conquest and so on, and then ordered him to try to conquer Rhodes, the island. And in the way to Rhodes, which they conquered because the Romans were in a bad shape at that time, he sent him appointed someone in Egypt and ordered the new one, that's a crony of him, really, some crony, to send a letter behind the fleet And when you get the news that Rhodes is conquered, obviously after conquering Rhodes, he has to manage things and stay several months there. And they received the letter that you have been removed and Fulan has been appointed. So complete the conquest and be in Rhodes for the time being. So what say عقبة بن عامر الجهني, the simple man say, ما أنصفنا أمير المؤمنين غربنا وعزلنا. Still a simple-minded man. He's still using the word Amir al-Mu'minin. He's still not waking up. That's what happened in the West. That's all that Egypt has. Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, Uqba ibn Amir, and few others. No sharp Sahabi who could lead a rebellion is there. None. But in Kufa and Basra, Jahannam is there waiting for him. So immediately go east. The Afghan rebelled, those rebelled, Khorasan rebelled, go take them back. And they got busy 7, 8, 10 years. Al-Hassan al-Basri was in the campaign to reconquer Kabul. And he had very reports about Kabul and so on. And then he was, then after that, the one who conquered most of Khorasan at that time was appointed Amir there. Al-Hassan al-Basri was his katib and came back only in the year 53. So he went out in the year 42, 42, 43 and was absent 10 years. And imagine in this campaign, he remembers 150 of the Sahaba he met face to face. And most of them are heavyweight, ferocious fighters. Not like what in Egypt, mostly docile people from Yemen, late Islam, good people, but nothing which you can really lead a revolution against Muawiyah. Meanwhile, Samr ibn Jundub, Busr ibn Arta, and then Samr ibn Jundub, then Ziyad, slaughtered everyone left and right center, avoiding their absent Sahaba and killing anyone below them. So when they come back, if they come alive back, they will find supporter and relatives and Quran memorizer and people who are ready for revolution. They found nobody. All of them have been killed. In the 10 years, they have killed or cut the limbs of 70,000 in Basra alone. Read Samr ibn Jundub. That's how things work. How it works historically, unfortunately. And that's all sneaked, and the people did not, most fuqaha and muhaddithin, they are busy, they don't read seerah properly, they don't analyze it, or they deny it, because it has no isnad according to the claim, which is again not true, etc. And then we got that mess.
Is it not true that they lack isnad, the seerah?
No, it's not true. Go to Sayyid ibn Ishaq. Many single episodes are there with isnad. And the rest we know his mashayikh. One from his father and grandfather, who is a Sabiqin al-Awwalin, who was in Badr. Another one, he doesn't need to say isnad. But بلغني مشايخنا معروفين his mashayikh. They're known in various asanid. I don't know in various asanid. So his most Urwa ibn Zubair also does not mention his is very short as earlier one. Is all is stated in a firm language, indicating that he certain that he is that from Messenger of Allah, because he reached the generation who was present there and summarized quite well. And his seerah is available, both the version, Madani version, and the Egyptian version, which is narrated by the one who claimed that he's da'if, who is not da'if, the Qadi of Egypt. I will remember his name now in a minute. So that's all not true. This is just rumors. That's not true. Most generative of the seerah without isnad go back to Tawatur, most. But so if you were to derive a certain hukum about a specific point, you insist on isnad for that point. But the general picture is mutawatir.
So if that is the case, if you say the general picture is mutawatir, would that mean that the way the seerah was taught was, for example, the first compilers of these seerah books, did their teachers literally teach them the story of the Prophet bit by bit? Or did those compilers
especially in Medina, because at the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, Umar specifically appointed people to encourage the fighter and charge them, or that don't get mixed with ahkam and tabasil. That is not for these people. It's enough the judges will do that and that. Get them busy with the Quran reading and with the mulqas, the one tells the story. That one tells about Maghazi and how they were defeated in one place because of mistake, and in another place they won, how the winning was to encourage them for fight. So that's already in time of Umar. and the قصاصين working around. And you can't assume with 100% certainty that some of their students did not rely on memory alone. They wrote it down.
They wrote it down.
Almost everyone has his own صحيفة. That's it has to be studied better than what has been done until now.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is a fact. But you have to study it better. You have to study it better. Not just believe أحمد بن حنبل say 3 كتب أو هذا ليس لها أصل. السيرة والتاريخ والتفسير. The reason for Sirah, he want to make all Sirah narrators weak and make all narration weak by attacking Ibn Ishaq, who is superior to him in every respect. That's one. And save Malik, who is in the Sirah miserable. He doesn't know what happened in the first century. Almost nothing he knows. All what he reports about that is manifestly wrong.
He's a muhaddith though. Would he not be good at Sirah as well, since he's good at hadith?
He refused. He refused. He did not want. The same with I said, Ahmed bin Hanbal, his son reports that my father at Abdul Razzaq, when Abdul Razzaq come to the chapter, which contains al-ahadith al-radi', the bad ahadith. What he does, he stand up, go to the far corner of the masjid, so he cannot listen to them.
Yeah.
Well, that's all recorded by his own son and his own students. And they regard that as virtue, because Allah blinded them and recorded, alhamdulillah. So you know where the people are coming from. The people are people of desire and hawa. They're coming from Satan anger. And then he doesn't want to go back to tafasir and so on. Although the Quran itself يفسر نفسه, that Tabari, for example, and others were relying on narratives of tafsir of previous nations, especially from Ibn Abbas, and all of that is not a reliable week. But it's not true. The tafsir Mujahid and Ibn Abbas is quite a small volume, and the level of isnad in most of these or all of these, taking only the best one is level of Bukhari, and Bukhari produced some of them. They are known from Shibl, from the isnads are known, few isnads. So to escape that, because it's have things which do not fit their desire. Even the hadith, look at the hadith. ليس منا من حمل علينا السلاح. واضح الحديث اللي بتكوندم معاوية say لا أدري ما هذا. هذا كلام أحمد بن حنبل. If we dig their scandals, we will end having volumes of it. I'm not busy with that now, but if they force us to the other side, we'll dig that out. Shabab will dig that out, inshallah. If they are serious, instead of coming, what happened there? You can do it. Especially if you're Arabic speaker, go to the Shamil and start doing the research. If you don't know how to do the research, it's a simple way, but I gained through experience many tricks and so on. Contact with me with Telegram, push the recording button, and record our conversation. But you have to have some Arabic, which I refer to Arabic and Arabic search and so on. And then just apply that. In a few weeks, not in a few years, because the Shamila will do plenty of things for you. Alhamdulillah. We are not in, like the classical scholar, they have to go 20 years looking for isnad. It's there. In one day, you can get all of them, but you have to use good tricks and way of search. The moment you have that, then you can start putting them and comparing them, matan-wise and initial narrator-wise. And then when you find all channels in Tabarani and Bukhari and so on, you will find that many things which are in your mind have been fixed. They are simply blatantly false. It's blatantly false.
Yes.
But you have to sit and do the job. There's no other way. And also one of the job is that, for example, you are familiar with the Zaidi and so on. They should enter everything in a library, similar to Shamila or Al-Mu'jam al-Fiqhi, the Iranian. Yes. Initially, the Iranian made a blunder in the 90s, and they were told, Masoud Shajari here, what is this? They make it in a program with a key and things like that. They should get out of that mentality. It's not for sale. This is important to make it available for everyone.
Everyone needs to see it.
At last, later, I think 10 years, 15 years later, after the Shamila came and took the field and so on, they issued the Mu'jam al-Fiqh, which you can download locally or access on I advocate everyone should have a big enough hard disk so that you can download it, not in C, download it in D another or an external hard disk, or install it from there. It's easy to install from anywhere. You just give it in the information of installation, the path. make the path to the hard disk, and so on, and then keep updating. This way you have all the books. The Mu'jam al-Fiqh with this way is now excellent. All the books of the Shia and plenty of the Sunnah are there. Plenty. Some of them are, the Haqiqah is better and mashkool and so on. So it's superior in some of the Shamila things. You have to have that in your computer.
Yes.
Do that about they have something like that done? I don't think done to that level. So push them and they know them. It is not probable that what you have is buried there in Oman for 1,000 years. It has to be public now in the universe.
Very true.
The same with the Zaidi.
Yeah, the Zaids and Omanis have buried themselves. That's true.
That's true. But they have to. They have to be like Shamila, or better even, because they can benefit from mistake of Shamila and advance, make a better and nicer programming. Maybe they can add artificial intelligence and so on, at least a free part of it as an extra which you can use. So many things have developed, and these are sleeping in deep sleep for 1,000 years. That's not this way. At least a Shia waked up, and the initial run with key and disk, and you have to have the disk and the key and all the. This is nonsense. At last, they recognize this is a death trap. That's not good. That don't serve knowledge. It's good to hide knowledge, maybe, but if that's what you want, that's something else. It has to be public, free, as much as possible, and as reliable as possible, and updated and clean as much as possible. And the program itself has to be improved over that what Shamila has.
Just wanted to come back on the point you mentioned about mafhum mukhalafa. The condition is it just rationally based? You said if there's no other option, then mafhum mukhalafa applies where it's suitable.
Yeah, because of that's a necessity. If there's no other option, but usually there are thousands of options. In everything they applied mafhum mukhalafa, is immediately clear that like for example, many said as-sa'ima, the grazing animals. الحديث لا زكاة في السائمة أو شيء أو كذا. السائمة إلى آخره. أول شيء they define سائمة غلط, mistaken. السائمة is the animals which are used for growth. Depending if they are fed, usually in that time and even until now, they are fed by nature because it's too expensive to plant for them and feed with the plants. But they could be fed by plants if they are established to produce meat and so on. The other ones who are not سائمة, there's zakat. When they say لا زكاة في السائمة, they say مفهوم مخالفة إنه أو إنه the non-سائمة, whatever they define, there is zakat. There's no zakat on it. No, it's not a zakat with a سائمة which 1 in 40 sheep, etc. Does not apply. The moment you take it, ready to sell to the market or sell it for the slaughterhouse, it becomes like عروض التجارة. It becomes your capital to be taxed. And if it is in your account, the moment of the zakah, you have to bring the 2.5% of that. It's not 1 of 40 and so on. All this حق السائمة similar. That's an option. Yeah. Or it may be for the non-sa'ima, the zakat should be half of the sa'ima. There are many options. So how can claim no zakat in the non-sa'ima? No. The zakat, as we specified for the sa'ima, applies to non-sa'ima. What applies, we have to check other options.
Okay, guys, let's go, inshallah. It's getting very late, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the time now?
It's 11:26.
What's 10 to 10?
11:26.
11 oh, quite late.
Yeah.
Quite late. Anyway, but I would advise not to micromanage. The issue with the mafhum mukhalafa is an usuli issue is worth discussing. The other details about slander, counter slander, the brother, he is having an obsession with micromanagement. That's common sense is clear. من اعتدى عليك فاعتدوا عليه مثل اعتدى عليكم ولا إن صبرتم فهو خير من الصابرين. You have this. That will not violate جادلهم بالتي أحسن. Starting with slander is not جادلهم بالتي أحسن. You should not do that, etc. You can deduce that. No need really to go in that and make it a big issue. Unless it becomes actual in a certain situation, neither. And you can develop it by yourself. You don't need to ask me or ask anybody else. Get in the habit to read the Quran and try to understand. If you come and teach an issue which is different than the fuqaha have arrived, or you feel it is odd and you feel it's incomplete, then we can discuss after doing the work. This way we can progress. Otherwise, we'll be turning into a 40th station, which is not correct. is wrong. Yeah. Okay, inshallah. Okay. I say we conclude. Whatever we have said, some of what we have said maybe is not nice in the heat of discussion and so on. So we say سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وآل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. تصبحون على خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.